Hello, welcome back to Bjorn Does Movies. I'm Bjorn, and I do movies. And today we're actually doing the Suicide Squad 5. We're going to introduce our characters. Maybe there may have been a little prankage last week, but this time I'm legit. So let's not waste too much time. Let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Pump up Grandson Squad, introduce our squad, let's go. All right. First off, we've got our returning squad members. I'm gonna speed run this. This is gonna be a fast one. We got Flatline, we've got Chemo, we've got Shade, we've got Blockbuster. Who else? Boomerang, Harley, Idris Elba, Bloodsport, Ratcatcher.
Nanaue, aka King Shark.
That everyone? Oh, the Hat. Oh my God, I almost forgot the most important character in the entire canon, the Hat. And last but certainly not least, Dorothy Spinner and her fabulous imaginary friend, Candlemaker. We got a few surprises. So let's go through the people who are new to this cast. This is Katana. She's got my back. I'd advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of her victims. That's right, the titular Katana is going to be in this movie. She featured obviously in the wonderfully bad 2016 Suicide Squad, and now she's going to be in mine, where she will not be stupid and she'll actually get some screen time. We've got Madame Xanadu, a classic DC character who I think is also from Arthurian legend, if I'm not mistaken. She's King Arthur and Morgan Le Fay's sibling. She appeared briefly in the after credit scene of my last movie, where we saw her sort of interacting with the portal from Suicide Squad 3 I wrote on this channel. There's a lot of continuity here. And that's really it on the Suicide Squad. I added like 2 new characters basically. I already had a fairly large cast. I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all right now, I intend to kill more than half of this cast. That's right, you didn't mishear me. More than half of this cast will be dead by the end of this movie. Uh-oh. Things are really heating up for all your favorites. That's right, specifically you. Your favorite is going to die. Let's go ahead and dive into our villains, because we do have a few new faces on this front. We've got our Society of Shadows as seen last time. Of course, that being Nightshade, the leader, and some sort of Lovecraftian deity from another universe. Obviously, she's got some history with Shade, the Changing Man, and we're going to flesh that out a lot. In fact, the Society of Shadows will get a lot more screen time in this movie than they did previously. So, the other members, of course, Clue Master, Gentleman Ghost, Plastique, our old pal, the Betrayer, Clock King, and Orca, Lilith Clay, and last but certainly not least, Calculator, who's been in all 3 movies now. I think he's one of the last characters that's been in all 3 of these things. Clock King and Flatline being the others. So, there you go. So we're going to add a few new characters to this movie. I'm not saying how long they'll stick around, but we're adding them. One of them is Eel. Now, Eel has been mentioned previously in the last movie. It is Orca's son, the one that gets killed on one of Waller's missions. And I guess I can go ahead and mention that we are going to see a flashback, which will allow me to also mention that Rick Flag will make a cameo in this movie. In addition to one other character who won't be a member of the Society of Shadows, but will appear in said flashback. And that is, of course, KG Beast. I wanted to work this guy in for a while. I love KG Beast. He's obviously associated with the squad pretty heavily. I thought up a fun set piece to introduce him in a while ago, so there we go. Bringing in KG Beast. And that's really it. This is a very quick one. Everyone knows who's going to be in this one. There's not many surprises as far as new cast members. I made it pretty clear that I'm using this as the finale, so I'm carrying over characters from the previous movies. That being said, y'all might be wondering what this movie is about. And what do you mean? Why would you ask that? Come on, man. This hypothetical person asking me questions is really rubbing me the wrong way, because this is a continuation of the last one. All that this is going to be is the Suicide Squad trying to figure out what in the heck Nightshade and her followers are doing and trying to stop it. Of course, we got some pretty sinister undertones in the after-credit scenes that maybe their plans are much, much, much larger than we even anticipated. This movie will be epic. It's going to be the longest Suicide Squad movie I've written. As I said, I'm going to kill it a very large chunk, and some of those numbers might be changed. It might be more or less than 50%, but I'm shooting for around that point. You can expect a lot of chaos, a lot of action, a lot of really cool superpowers. So go ahead and let me know early on, who are your death predictions? I want to know. Who do you think I'm going to kill? You guys know me. I like to torture y'all, so hit me below. Who is going to die? Who is going to live? What do you think is going to happen? Should I part my hair this way? Or should I part my hair this way? I mean, it's really up to y'all. So let me know below, and next video I'll part my hair whichever way wins. Alright, adios. See y'all in the next one. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I am out of here. Hello, I'm Bjorn and I do movies, and welcome to the first act of the Suicide Squad Part 5, the finale to my entire series, trilogy, whatever you want to call it. Just a reminder, I'm going to generally throw this out now and I'll probably give it again later. This is a sequel. If you have not seen 3 or 4, I highly recommend it. Annotation above, I will drop another reminder right now as we get into the script.
Hey guys, just a reminder that this is in fact a sequel. If you have not watched 3 or 4, I would highly recommend going back and watching those. I'll include a link up in the annotations. Thanks again. I am going to title the Suicide Squad 5, The Suicide Squad Shadow Dimension. We're going to open on Belle Reve. The camera pans through the cells as we hear Steely Dan's Do It Again play. We see a prison hall and hear shouting from prisoners who reach through the bars of their cells. We see Rick Flag walking down the hall in his classic yellow outfit, probably pretty close to the one in The Suicide Squad. He arrives at a cell and stops. The camera wheels around, and inside we can see Cluemaster doing push-ups. Flag says, "Arthur Brown, you're up. We've got a mission for you." Cluemaster looks up from the floor. "Is it that time already?" Flag says, "It is." We're going to cut to the surgery room. We see Cluemaster get his bomb injected. Rick Flag says, "We've designated you as team leader. You'll have direct communication with Miss Waller. Your team is ready to go. We'll have you wheels up in 20. Cluemaster says, "Just what is it that we're doing?" Rick Flag says, "An assassination of a high-ranking Russian official." Cluemaster laughs. He says, "No, really." Flag says, "Wasn't a joke." Cluemaster says, "You've got to be fucking kidding me." And Rick Flag says, "You'll be fine. The whole operation is planned to go smoothly. You've got some heavy hitters to watch your back, too." We're going to cut to the tarmac. We see Cluemaster approaching the helicopter. The camera zooms out and we see Rick Flag watching it. Katana walks up and stands next to him. She says, "You coming?" And he goes, "Yeah." She starts to head towards the copter, but Rick Flag grabs her arm. He says, "Not that one." Katana turns and looks at him. "You're sending them to die?" she asks. And Flag says, "Part of Waller's plan. They're the distraction." Katana looks at him and says, "You're better than this, Rick." He looks away. He says, "It's the mission." Katana says, "Then this is my last. Don't let Waller turn you into something you're not. When I knew you, you were a hero. The man I knew would never send his own to their deaths." We're going to cut to the helicopter. We see Cluemaster board the vehicle. Inside we see Nightshade, Plastique, Gentleman Ghost, Eel, and Atomic Skull. Of course, Eel, it looks like he does in the comic books. I'll flash a quick picture of him. I love his little face helmet thing with the red dot. I think it's super goofy. His mask is removed though. He's holding 2 1-gallon jugs of water. Cluemaster says, "Looks like I'm going to be your leader." Eel asks, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm Cluemaster." Plastique and Gentleman Ghost laugh. Eel says, "That's a stupid name, bro." Cluemaster says, "Great. What are you called, smart guy?" Eel says, "I'm the Eel." Atomic Skull looks over. Of course, he's got his kind of energy-laden skull. I think it's kind of a funny gag to have no one acknowledge it the whole time. I think that's pretty funny. Atomic Skull says, "What, like the fish?" Eel says, "Eel ain't a fish, man." Gentleman Ghost says, "Pretty sure it is." At this point, Cluemaster has taken a seat and the helicopter is taking off. Eel says, "I'm pretty sure you're wrong." Plastique says, "I definitely think an eel is a fish." Atomic Skull says, "It has gills, right?" And Eel says, "My name is literally Eel. Trust me, guys. I know an eel ain't a fish. It's an eel." We're going to cut to Belle Reve. We see the workers doing their pre-mission gambling. It's exactly like in the Suicide Squad. They're throwing money around. Someone says, "Nightshade, what's her deal?" Assistant 2 says, "Amnesia controls shadows, we think." Assistant 1 says, "I'll put 20 on her to die last." Assistant 3 says, "Put me down for 400 and Eel to die first." Guy is a stupid name. Someone says, 400 and Eel, got it. Waller walks in and says, "You lot, they're about to hit the ground." They all scramble to their positions and hide what they're doing. We cut to the helicopter. We see Eel drinking one of his water jugs. He downs the whole thing and then starts on the next one. Plastique looks at him with horror and says, "Is that even safe? I'm pretty sure you could die from drinking that much water." Eel says, "No, dude, it's cool. I'm hydroloading." Gentleman Ghost says, "That's not a real thing." Eel finishes off the second gallon and lets out a little burp. "Sure it is." "Hey, have any of you ever done this before?" Atomic Skull says, "Sure, loads of times. This is my 4th. Eel asks, "Is it dangerous?" Atomic Skull says, "Only if you're stupid. Look, kid, I'm a real heavy hitter. Energy blast the whole 9 yards. Don't worry about it. Just stay behind me, and this is going to go smoothly. We see a military guy step out from the front of the cockpit. He says, "We're over enemy airspace. We're going to drop in 5. Get your parachutes ready." Eel says, "What parachutes?" Military guy says, "Under your seat." Eel says, "No, I meant more like, why do we need them?" The military guy says, "To get to the ground." Eel says, "Oh, dude, no, I don't really do heights." The military guy says, "Today you do." We see them fish out their parachutes and begin to strap them on. Eel nervously puts his on and looks scared. Military guy says, "It's going to be a tight window. You jump when I say go." He opens up the back of the helicopter, and we see only darkness and a few flickering lights below. Eel says, "Holy fuck, that's really high. I mean, how do we even deploy the chutes?" Military guy says, "It automatically deploys at the right altitude. Don't worry about it." Plastique says, "And it works?" Military guy says, "Most of the time," with a smile. Eel says, "The fuck does that mean?" A little alarm rings through the room. Military guy says, "All right, that's it. Go, go, go." We see Plastique, Cluemaster, Gentleman Ghost, and Nightshade all bail out of the helicopter. Atomic Skull turns to Eel. He says, "You gotta jump, asshole." Eel says, "I can't do it, man. Fuck that." Military guy says, "You go or we blow your bomb." Eel says, "Fuck." He closes his eyes. And as he does, Atomic Skull pushes him off the back of the helicopter while laughing. He jumps after. We follow Eel as he falls. He screams non-stop until the chute deploys. He looks down and we can see the tops of fir trees in the forest below. As he looks up, we can see Atomic Skull go flying past him, holding his arms up to slow his fall. He screams, "My chute isn't deploying!" We see him go flying straight into a tree at full speed. He's impaled on several branches, and one goes right through his flaming skull. The light of it immediately winks out, and we can see it's just a normal human head. Eel says, "Oh, fuck." Gentleman Ghost says over the comm, "Did he just die?" We see the remaining members land on the ground. They get untangled from their chutes and approach Atomic Skull's dangling corpse. Plastique says, "I think he's dead." Eel says, "Yeah, I think you're right." Nightshade says, "What are we going to do?" Gentleman Ghost says, "I'd say leave him up there. I don't know how we're supposed to get him down." Nightshade said, "No, I mean about the mission. He was supposed to be the big hitter. He said so." Waller chimes in over their intercoms. "I've got a KIA readout on an Atomic Skull. Is the transponder broken?" Cluemaster says, "No, he's dead up in a tree." Gentleman Ghost says, "It's more like the trees in him." Cluemaster waves him away and says, "What do we do, Waller?" Waller says, "Continue the mission. There's no turning back now." Cluemaster says, "All right, we'll make do." He taps off his earpiece and gestures to the others. He says, "Look here." He pulls out a map from his bag and points to it. "The compound we're raiding is a mile that way. We have to be quiet. We want to take down as many as we can without guards being alerted." Plastique says, "I have a problem with that. I don't do quiet. I make explosions." Cluemaster says, "Then don't." Plastique rolls her eyes. Cluemaster says, "What do the rest of you do?" Eel just says, "Water." Cluemaster says, "What, do you drink it?" He goes, "No, more like I move it and stuff." Gentleman Ghost says, "I walk through walls, but I can only do it in short bursts." Cluemaster finally turns to Nightshade. He says, "What about you?" She says, "Well, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I move the shadows." Cluemaster says, "Okay. Can I kill people?" She says, "Probably." Cluemaster says, "Great. Then you're ready. Let's go." We hear the song Rasputin start to play as the camera zooms around to the front of the compound. We can see Russian lettering marking the front of it. 2 guards are blocking the entrance to the compound through a fence. Eel taps Cluemaster in the shoulder and he starts to make a bunch of nonsense hand gestures. Cluemaster says, "What?" Eel says, I got him." Cluemaster whispers, "Are you sure?" Eel's like, "Yeah, totally." He creeps forward slowly. Water begins to run from his mask as if he's spitting it out of his mouth. It forms balls in his hands. He thrusts them out, and the balls of water fly out and cover the guards' heads. They struggle, trying to squeeze and move at the water, but it won't come out. To no avail. The guards drown in the floating balls of water. Eel says, "Boom!" The balls of water come back into his hands and then swirl back up into his mask, as if going back into his body. We see Plastique make a face as if it's disgusting. The squad moves up as the song continues to play. We see a search light move back and forth across the concrete area, searching for people approaching. They move carefully, avoiding the spotlight. We see 2 guards standing out in the open. Cluemaster sneaks up on them before removing his knife. He slits one's throat before stabbing the other through the skull. We cut to mission command. We see Assistant 1 turn and say, "Team 2 is in place and awaiting commands." Waller says, "What is Team 1 doing? They're supposed to be drawing out the guards." Assistant 2 says, "It looks like they're operating stealthy." Waller says, "Well, I put them together specifically to avoid that." "This won't do." She taps a button and says, "Task Force X, we picked up radio chatter. They know you're there. Go guns blazing." Cluemaster says, "They're onto us." He pulls the rifle off his back and shoots a guard off one of the towers. Armed men begin to pour out of the building. Plastique rolls a golf ball from her bag towards the doorway. It explodes, making the guards turn into a pile of gore. Eel forms a ball of water at his feet, which he proceeds to ride. He zooms up to one of the guard towers and cuts a guard in two with a sword made of water. We see Gentleman Ghost walk up to two guards. The guards open fire on him, but the bullets pass through him. Suddenly he vanishes and becomes invisible. We can see his footprint in the snow. When the guard has to reload, Gentleman Ghost reappears in front of him. Says, "Boo." He stabs one and then slits the other's throat. A group of armed guards exit the compound. Cluemaster throws a knife, killing one. They open fire on him and Nightshade, and they have to move. They dive behind a concrete barrier. Cluemaster pulls a pistol and begins to fire from behind cover. He drops a guard. Nightshade moves her hands in a certain way, and a shadow portal opens up underneath two of the guards. They fall through it, and we see them reappear in the shadow of the upper floor of the building. They fall to their deaths and explode on the pavement below. Suddenly, a massive man appears in the doorway, shoving through the remaining guards. He has cybernetics running across his face and a minigun arm. It's KG Beast. He looks exactly like he does in the comic books. Plastique rolls out from behind cover with a couple of small marbles in her hand. But KG Beast is too quick. He fires his minigun towards her and riddles her with holes. Plastique drops the marbles and they roll right next to Gentleman Ghost. They explode, blowing his legs off. He starts to scream as he bleeds to death. He tries to crawl away in the snow, leaving behind a trail of blood. He quickly turns invisible, but again, his blood trail is clearly visible. KG Beast walks up to the end of the blood trail and begins to fire his minigun down, riddling Gentleman Ghost with bullets. As soon as he dies, his body reappears, completely dead and riddled with holes. Eel slides in on the back of his water bubble and lands next to Nightshade and Cluemaster behind the barrier. He has a bullet hole in his arm. He says, "There's way too many of them. We can't win." Cluemaster nods. He taps his ear. He says, "We're dropping like flies out here, Waller. We need to retreat." Waller taps in on her earpiece and says, "I'm afraid not. Try it and I will detonate your bombs." Cluemaster says, "Why? We're losing this. We're just gonna die for nothing." And Waller says, "Not for nothing. You were only the distraction." This is, of course, calling back to the last thing Cluemaster says to Waller before he kills her in the previous movie. Cluemaster says, "You can't do this." Waller says, "Actually, I can." We see Cluemaster slump where he is. Nightshade says, "What?" Cluemaster says, "She's not going to let us leave." Eel says, "What the fuck does that mean?" Cluemaster says, "She says we have to fight till we die. That we're just a distraction." Nightshade says, "Die." She begins to shake with fear. Bullets begin to hit the concrete around them. We see KG Beast look around. He notices the rest of the squad's hiding and he smiles. Eel says, "Fuck that. I'm not dying. I'm getting out of here." He forms a bubble of water and rides it away. Bullets land around him, but he escapes the compound. Waller calls into him on his earpiece and says, "You keep running and I'll blow your head right off your body. Try me." Eel says, "I'm not dying for you. You're full of shit." We're going to cut back to Belle Reve. We see Waller rolling her eyes as she unlocks the bomb panel. Waller says, "Turn around, Belline. That's an order." Eel says, "Fuck you." Waller says, "Well, I tried." She turns the key and presses the red button. We see Eel's head explode. His body flops into the snow in a jumbled heap. The snow turns right around him in a halo. Cluemaster, who was watching, says, "Fuck!" Minigun fire from KG Beast's arm begins to hit the concrete in front of them. It chips away at it until it's almost gone. So he says, in a strong Russian accent, "Come out, little Americans. We will take you alive if you let us." Nightshade looks around terrified. She says, "Are we going to die?" Cluemaster says, "No, you're going to be fine. I'll lay down fire. You take this and get to better cover." He hands her a rifle. She says, "I don't know how to use this." He says, "Point it and pull the trigger. Now go!" She takes it and begins to run for better cover. Cluemaster lays down covering fire, firing at the Russians. He kills one before he's hit in the chest with a bullet, but he keeps going, firing at them with bullets. He hits KG Beast, but the bullet bounces off his metal arm. Nightshade makes it to cover and starts to shoot the rifle as cover fire. We see Cluemaster limp towards the cover, but again he's hit in the shoulder. He keeps going. He's almost to safety when a bullet catches him through the lung. He falls to the floor, choking and sputtering. As he dies, he looks into Nightshade's eyes. She begins to panic again until we hear a faint voice. It whispers, "Nightshade," all sinister-like. Clumps of dark shadow begin to float around her like the fluid in a lava lamp. Her own shadow surrounds her, changing and contorting directions until it's entirely circular. We see her eyes glow purple. Shadows climb up her neck and bore into her flesh. We see it carefully remove the bomb before destroying it. A small trickle of blood runs down her neck. We cut to Belle Reve. Assistant 2 says, "That's it, we just lost Nightshade. We've got KIA readouts on everybody." Waller says, "Alright, swap me over to Team 2. We see the readouts on the screen change. The satellite turns and moves to watch the other side of the compound. We're going to cut to Russia. We see Rick Flag come over the hilltop, flanked by Harley Quinn, Katana, Boomerang, Blockbuster, Sportsmaster, and Clock King. Waller taps into his ear and says, "Alright, Flag, you've got the all clear. You have free range to take out the target." Flag says, "Will do, Waller." In the distance we hear gunfire. Katana looks towards it, and Flag notices. He says, "You're right. It's wrong. I can't stop it this time, but next time, I'll do what's right. I promise. Katana shakes her head and says, I'm still leaving, Rick. I can't believe I didn't see it before, but this is wrong. All of it. We're meant for better. Postmaster waves his hand and says, Hey Flag, I got dibs on killing this prick. I've been itching to kill a government official. It's like a badge of honor. Harley Quinn laughs and says, It's overrated. I've done it loads of times. The camera moves away and begins to travel across the compound until it reaches Nightshade. The shadows are continuing to pool around her. Armed men are closing in on either side of her and preparing for the kill. Shadows completely coat her and she begins to laugh. A bullet rips into the concrete above her and she seems to remember where she is. She snarls. We see the shadows begin to change directions on all the armed men. They warp and move in strange ways. KG Beast notices. He looks at his men just in time to see the shadows climbing up them. They begin to be ripped apart. Their arms and legs and body parts are completely removed. Their heads are torn off their body and they're left as piles of gore by the shadows. Until only KG Beast remains. He says, What the fuck? He turns and runs into the building. The lights in the hall are swallowed by shadows one by one as KG Beast runs to try to stay in the light. He's caught in darkness. Only a single light remains on at the end of the hall. In its flickering light, we see Nightshade form her body from pure blackness. Her eyes glow purple. KG Beast says, You don't scare me, American. I already killed your friends. You will die too. Nightshade laughs and says, I'm not American. Sometimes when I've crossed over to a new world, I forget who I am for a time. It takes a little while for those pieces of me to cross over from the other plane. But I remember now. You should have just let us complete our mission. KG Beast fires his minigun at her. The bullets leave holes all through her body, but they're quickly mended by Shadow until she's whole once more. Your antiquated technology will do nothing to stop me. Shadows begin to climb KG Beast's arms. They flow into his mouth as he tries to scream. We see his bones all break, splintering in wild direction. His body is ripped apart from the inside until it explodes into a shower of gore. Nightshade is covered in blood. It drips from her body. She begins to float off the ground, shadows holding her up like a harness as they tendril to the wall. She begins to make her way back outside, floating. The shadowy tendrils launch out from her and begin to touch every single Suicide Squad member who died. They enter their mouths, and we see their eyes open as they gasp for air. Their eyes turn purple. We see Cluemaster begin to cough. The wounds on his chest are healing themselves, and the bullets fall out one by one. He sits up and looks confused. We see Plastique and Gentleman Ghost doing the same. Lastly, we see the shadows pull the bombs out of their neck and destroy them. Cluemaster says, I was dead. I died. I was dead. Nightshade appears from nothingness in front of him and caresses his chin. She says, You did. She moves a hand up to touch his cheek. But I brought you back, because there is work to be done. The others begin to scramble up awkwardly. They all look towards Eel's body. He's still on the ground and unmoving in a pool of blood. Plastique says, What about him? Nightshade says, I'm afraid I need the brain to bring someone back. He's beyond my help now. Cluemaster says, What work do we have to do? Nightshade says, I had forgotten my purpose for a time, but I remember now. How would you like revenge? Cluemaster says, I have a couple of people I want to kill, Rick Flag and Amanda Waller. Nightshade says, Oh, you can have them, but you're thinking too small. We can tear it all down. The government that enslaved you, the society that rejected you. We can forge something better. Cluemaster says, I don't know about taking down the government. That's a bit above my pay grade. A shadowy tendril reaches out and touches him. His eyes flash purple. He says, I will do it. I will kill every one of them. In an almost robotic way. Gentleman Ghost's eyes begin to glow purple too. He says, I'm in as well. I have been mistreated one too many times. It's about time they get haunted. Plastique turns and looks at them kind of awkwardly and says, how do you feel about Canada? Because all I want to do is destroy Quebec. If you feel like tearing down Quebec, then I'm in. Nightshade says, Oh, I don't think you quite understood. Plastique's eyes turn purple. Nightshade says, I did say everything. I'm going to rip this world apart at the seams. The camera moves into Nightshade's purple eyes, and we get the title drop alongside a horror-sounding sound cue. And I'm going to put more horror elements into this movie. It's sort of like Candlemaker in the third one. So Nightshade is pretty scary, as far as I've written it. The title slowly shifts into patterns matching Shade's duster. It moves across the screen until we pull out of Shade's duster. He's carrying a young girl, and shadows swallow the world around him. Strangely designed skyscrapers with bright colors are completely consumed by shadows. Tentacles made out of shadows are snagging people and pulling them into the darkness. We see text that says, The Dimension Meta. The young girl in his arms begins to sob. She says, Shade, it's going to get us. Shade says, no, it won't. I've got you. Suddenly, a shadow snags the girl's leg and pulls her from his arms. She's jerked into the darkness. She screams, Shade, help! Before he can grab her, she vanishes into the darkness. We hear her screaming. It's raw and pained, but then there's nothing. Shadows climb the last of the building, toppling them to the ground. The darkness begins to surround Shade until he's completely trapped in pitch blackness. We hear a whisper from the dark. It's Nightshade. She says, Shade. We see Shade wake up with fear. He's in the back of a van with Chemo, Flatline, Dorothy Spinner. The Hat is driving. Flatline says, Shade, Shade, we're here. He's stirred from his sleep and he looks over. The camera moves across the van, revealing palm trees surrounding a warehouse. We see text that says, the Florida Keys. Shade says, are the others here? And Flatline says, I don't think so. Shade says, call them. Flatline picks up a radio they've taped to the back of the car. She says, hey, are y'all here yet? We're going to cut to another car driving down the road. In it, we see Harley, Boomerang, Blockbuster, King Shark, and Ratcatcher. Bloodsport is driving the van. Harley is saying, wow, I can't believe I'm really in Florida. I've always wanted to come here. Boomerang bangs his head on the seat in front of him. We see Ratcatcher is sleeping, out cold in the front seat. Despite the shaking, she continues to sleep. Harley says, oh, you think we can get some real key lime pie? I love key lime pie. Boomerang says, Jesus fucking Christ, Harles, would you shut the fuck up? Harley says, what, Booma, what'd I do? And Boomerang says, it's been Florida this and Florida that for 50 fucking minutes, Harles. Harley says, what, I'm excited to be in Florida. He says, who the fuck would be happy to be in Florida? King Shark says, I like Florida. Boomerang says, shut the hell up, Nanawe. Bloodsport from the front seat yells, why don't you all shut the fuck up? I'm trying to drive. Suddenly we hear Flatline's message come through. Bloodsport picks up the intercom. He says, we're about 15 minutes behind. Got held up. Flatline says, we're gonna go in. Doesn't seem to be anyone around. Place seems deserted. Bloodsport says, be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. Their car passes an orange grove. Harley says, holy shit, they have fresh oranges too! Boomerang says, Bloodsport, buddy, right between my eyes. Just one bullet. Bloodsport lets out an exasperated sigh. We're gonna cut to the warehouse. We see the Suicide Squad from the first car bail out. Chemo is in the same metal suit as always. Dorothy Spinner has her imaginary teddy bear riding on her shoulder. The Hat is in fact wearing his hat. Flatline stretches and says, so this is what vacation feels like. Chemo says, you don't usually raid a warehouse on vacation. She says, so what do you do? The Hat says, sleep and drink. Chemo says, or, you know, see what's around, hang out with family. Flatline says, oh, we're family now, are we? She raises her eyebrows sarcastically. Chemo says, that's not what I meant. Flatline says, relax, I'm just teasing you. You make it too easy, though. She takes his hand and holds it. He smiles inside the suit. And I'll point out now that there's been a time skip. I think that's pretty clear. About 3 or 4 months. And in that time, Chemo and Flatline have started dating. I thought that was pretty clearly being set up in the 4th movie. They hang out a lot together in that movie. So, just letting y'all know that's a development. We'll get more into it as the movie goes on. We're going to see Sergeant Stuffy on Dorothy's shoulder. He says, it's quiet. Too quiet. I don't like it. Just means Charlie's hiding in the jungle. Flatline says, or it means Bloodsport's tip is bad. Shade says, Nightshade is crafty. She will try any tactic to throw us off the scent. It would not be beyond her to send us a fake lead. Chemo says, we've been chasing our own tail for months with no sign of these guys. This is the best lead we've got. Even if it's fake, it's worth checking. Flatline says, I guess so. Dorothy says, it's just nice to get out of the house for a while, even if it is just to some gross warehouse. Chemo says, see? Dorothy is looking positively on the situation. The Hat says, this human air makes me wish I could drink. Flatline says, you're 3 months sober. Are you really going to throw that away over Florida? The Hat says, trust me, Florida's made many a man drink. I'm good, though. Chemo says, we're proud of you. It's funny, now that you're sober, I can actually stand to be around you. We're going to suddenly shift our view. We're seeing them through the scope of a rifle now. The camera pulls back and reveals Clock King on the roof. He's got a large sniper rifle. A voice comes through his radio. Plastique says, they're here. I can see them through my scope. I can detonate the explosives. Clock King says, not yet. This isn't all of them. We want them all. This is pointless if we only get half. Plastique says, you're in charge. We're going to cut to the inside of the warehouse. The squad moves through the empty halls of the building looking for anything. Chemo says, you know, I feel like we always end up inside a warehouse. Flatline says, only that one time. Oh, and I guess this time. Chemo says, yeah, I guess it was only twice. Still weird it happened twice. They come to a large area in the center. Windows frame everything, giving clear line of sight to the inside of the building. In the center, we see a metal portal frame, just like the one from Suicide Squad 3. Flatline says, you know, a lot of things are repeating themselves today. Chemo says, what is that? Flatline says, It's the thing that brought the evil versions of the Justice League in Texas. It's a portal maker. Dorothy says, yeah, it's the exact same, but why is it here? Shade looks concerned. He says, it makes portals, you say? To where? Flatline says, I don't know. Not here. Not this world. Shade says, you mean it allows one to access the multiverse? Flatline says, I guess so. Weird way of phrasing it. Shade says, we are in more danger than I thought. Far more. Flatline begins to approach the portal. She's looking at the electronics. She says, it's hooked up to some kind of remote switch. And Keyman says, that doesn't sound good. Just then the second group of squad members enter the room. Harley says, hey, it's that thing from Texas. Blockbuster says, Blockbuster. Shade says, this is a trap. We need to go now. She would not let us see this and live. Bloodsport says, what's got you all worked out? Suddenly we hear a gunshot. Blockbuster falls to the floor with a gunshot wound to the head. A second shot rings out and Flatline is hit. She falls to the floor. We see Clock King reloading the rifle. He lets out a curse. We hear Bloodsport say, Sniper! They all hit whatever cover they can. King Shark blocks Ratcatcher and Dorothy from gunfire. Ratcatcher holds up her device and rats begin to swarm through the warehouse. They begin to blot out the windows with their bodies so that no one has a line of sight. We see Clock King. He folds up his gun and says, that damned oath stepped in front of my shot and now I've lost line of sight. Detonate the explosives, Plastique. Plastique says, gladly. She presses a trigger. We're going to cut back to the warehouse. We see Harley is crying over Blockbuster's body. He's not moving. She says, Blocky, what'd they do to you? Chemo is body blocking Flatline in his metal suit. We can see a bullet wound in her shoulder. She's bleeding pretty bad. Chemo says, are you okay? She says, not exactly, but I'm not dying yet. Chemo says, I'm going to get you out of here. Hat, we need your hat. The hat says, on it. He pulls his hat off his head and is about to throw it on the ground when a sudden explosion rocks the building. The hat is blown apart in the explosion. We can see his body parts leave his body. His hat vanishes in a plume of smoke and his head rolls to where the others are. Bloodsport is thrown back against the wall by the force of the blast. His mask shatters, but he's alive. Ratcatcher is knocked to the floor, but is unharmed. Chunks of rubble smash into Chemo's suit as he protects Flatline from sure death. We can see a few dents in the suit, but he's okay, and so is she. The dust settles, revealing a large hole in the side of the warehouse from the explosion. Boomerang says, we gotta get out of here. They all rush for the newly formed exit. Chemo helps Flatline and walks her out of the building. Blood is soaking her white shirt. We see Clock King watch them leave through his scope. He's lining up a finishing shot on Flatline. He's about to fire when a hand touches the barrel of his gun. He looks up and we see Nightshade. She smiles and says, I can handle it from here. I wish to do this personally. Call off the others. She vanishes. Clock King touches his earpiece. Pack it up. We're done. Plastique says, what do you mean? You're just going to let them get away? He says, they're not getting away. Nightshade says she wanted to do this personally. Looks like we killed the drunk asshole, and now our work is done. We see the squad turn down an alleyway. A wall of solid shadow blocks their path. Shade walks up and touches it. He says, Nightshade is here. We need to move. The rest of the squad turns to run back the way they came. Shade turns to follow, but a wall of shadow appears blocking his way. He turns around to check the other path, and Nightshade has appeared in front of him. She smiles and waves. We're going to cut to the squad. We see them being herded by walls until they come to a large square filled with tour shops. People fill the area everywhere. It's like a busy mall, sort of outdoor mall. They all stand perfectly still in the middle of actions as if they've been frozen. Each one of them has glowing purple eyes. Boomerang says, well, that's fucking creepy. All of the frozen tourists suddenly turn their heads to stare at the squad. Flatline says, yeah, I don't like that. The tourists begin to pick things up off the floor. Some pick up rocks and others pick up canes and pipes. They begin to turn towards the squad. Flatline reaches into her pocket and pulls out a knife rope. She begins to swing it. We still see the blood in her shoulder from where she's hit. Looks like it's gonna be a scrap. Bloodsport unlocks his bow arm and pulls it back. The little thing that shoots arrows that's on his sleeve in the movie. Bloodsport says, yeah, we're gonna cut to Shade. We see Nightshade standing in front of him. She says, Shade, I've missed you. Shade says, I can't say I feel the same. The shapes on the back of his duster begin swirling, and a dagger of color appears in his hand. Nightshade says, this doesn't have to come to pointless violence. Not yet. Shade says, I'm done listening to you. I know what you're playing at now. You want to open a portal to the shadow dimension, to bring your entire self into this world. Nightshade says, yes, just like you did all those years ago. I arranged the tip that led you here because I wanted you to understand what I've done. You've already lost, Shade. You and your followers don't have to die alongside this world. Join me. We could have it all again. I know you've missed me too. Shade says, no. I will stop at nothing to put an end to you, even if it kills me. And Nightshade says, are you sure this is the way you want this to go? I could kill them all in a matter of seconds. You know I could. The shadows pool around her, and they begin to spread across the walls like vines clinging up the sides of the buildings. She says, it would be so easy. Shade says, why are you so obsessed with me? Nightshade says, you wouldn't believe it possible of a being like me, but deep down I love you, Shade. Ever since you first found me with that strange little cloak of yours, you've stuck in my mind. Shade says, if you loved me, then stop. Let this world live. Nightshade sighs and says, it's tempting, but my nature is absolute. The shadow must spread to every corner of the universe. This is my purpose. You know it. Shade says, then kill me. Nightshade says, no. I think I'll spare you. Maybe time will change your heart, but you must learn a lesson. If you have others who care for you, you'll never come back to me. They have to go. Goodbye, Shade. I'll see you soon. Shade begins to pound on the shadow walls and screaming, no! But it's too late. She's gone, and the squad doesn't know what's coming. We see Bloodsport firing his armbow at the zombies as they grow closer. He kills 3 before pulling out his chest pistol to kill 2 more. We see Flatline kill a couple with her knife rope. Chemo snags one by the head and squeezes it with his metal fist, popping it. We see Dorothy Spinner summon the Jolly Hanger, the creature made out of clothes hanger, who kills a few by hooking them and ripping them apart. In the background, we see King Shark eating one of the zombies slowly. We see Boomerang throw a boomerang. It takes the head off one tourist, slices the throat of another before coming back to his hand. He laughs and throws it once more. It sticks straight into the chest of a man, killing him. We see Harley kill one with a bat. Boomerang says, now this is a vacation, right, Harles? Harley says, we're killing civilians. How is that a vacation? Boomerang says, you're no fun. You really think key lime pie is better than this? Suddenly, Nightshade emerges from Boomerang's shadow like a creature. She contorts her body around until she's staring right at him. She wraps her hands around his head and rips his head clean off his body before he can react. The body falls to the floor headless. Nightshade lets the head sarcastically roll over her other hand. It bounces across the floor. Blood is sprayed across her body. She turns and says, who dies next? No one answers their question as they're too busy fighting off tourists. We see Bloodsport kill one with the nanosword that comes out of his back before throwing the blade into the skull of another. Nightshade turns to him and says, you seem interesting. How about I kill you next? She takes a step towards him and suddenly finds herself trapped inside a bubble of green energy. She pounds at it with anger, but it doesn't break. The camera pans around and we see Madame Xanadu and Katana. Madame Xanadu is carving runes in light into the air with a finger. She's, looks like her classic comic book version. She's the version that has a blindfold on, though. Like, she's lost her eyes. I like that version, personally, as far as aesthetics go. Madame Xanadu struggles to hold the shield. She says, she is strong. I won't be able to hold her long. Quickly, Katana, open the path. Katana nods and tosses an oblong ring onto the floor. It spins around, casting a portal into the air. On the other side, we see Shade. He was rescued first. Shade says, quickly, through here. The squad begins to make their way through the portal. Chemo helps Flatline through it. She's bleeding from her shoulder bad. We see tendrils of shadow begin to crack through the shield. Just as Madame Xanadu steps through the portal, Nightshade breaks free. She picks up the gold ring from the floor and the portal vanishes. They're now inside a stone hall of a castle. Strange metal lights run along the walls, as well as bronze tubes for piping. All the windows are sealed with wood and metal. Dorothy says, what is this place? Madame Xanadu says, it's called Scutarius. It is a magical realm concealed within your own. We will be safe here for now. Bloodsport says, I don't care where we are. What the fuck was that? Shade says, that is what we are fighting. Ratcatcher says, what is she? The way she moved around the shadows, it's not natural. Madame Xanadu says, her name was once Morgana Le Fay. She was a sorceress of immense skill, but she was consumed by her ambition. She thought black magic was the greatest power in the world. Morgana, in her lust for power, decided to tap the power directly from its source. She tried to summon the shadow from a dimension of pure darkness, the shadow dimension. Its power consumed her, and my order was forced to seal her away in that shadow dimension. Flatline says, Morgana Le Fay, like King Arthur and Merlin? Madame Xanadu says, the very same. They are quite real, after all. Flatline says, how do you know this? She smiles and says, because Morgana was once my sister. Chemo says, but that would make you over 1,000 years old. Madame Xanadu says, a bit rude to ask a woman her age, but yes, I am 1,226 years old. Harley says, I don't care who the Shadow Lady is to you. She killed my friends, so I'm gonna kill her. Madame Xanadu turns to face her and says, you needn't worry, Harleen Quinzel. That creature stopped being Morgana a long time ago. She is just an avatar for the Shadow now. I would have no regrets putting her in the ground once and for all. Bloodsport says, and how do we kill her? And Madame Xanadu says, I don't know. Even in the time of the greatest magi, we can only seal her away, a measure which clearly proved ineffective. Shade says, I can do it. I don't know why, but she's afraid of me. I could sense it oozing off her. Mana Xanadu suddenly turns and says, I need time to think. Please make yourselves at home. I have all the comforts of the modern world. She gestures to where an old TV and VHS players sit. Madame Xanadu says, I will return with haste. Oh, and do not leave this castle. Scartarius is a dangerous place for those unprepared to brave it. She enters a room and shuts its wooden door behind her. Katana crouches down as if to guard the door. Flatline says, well, better find bandages and a movie. I get the feeling she's going to be in there for a while. We're going to cut to the Shadow Society complex that we saw at the after credit scene of the last movie. We see Lilith Clay trying to talk to Clock King, who sits on a couch. She says, think, Talkman. You know I'm right. It doesn't make sense. She's lying to us. She won't let me read her future. And what I can sense is all in flux. Clock King says, I don't care. Lilith says, you should. I think she's going to do something terrible. More than she's told us. We have to warn somebody. Clock King says, and why would I help you? I need her. She's the only one who can bring my sister back. Lilith says, then why hasn't she? It's been months, Talkman. She's done nothing but build these portals, and she won't say for what. You can't tell me that there isn't something off about it. Clock King says, maybe you don't understand. I would do anything for my sister. She was innocent in this world. I will not betray Nightshade, Lilith. I like you, so don't do anything foolish. She is dangerous. Lilith Clay storms off. We're going to cut to later. We see her sneaking through the building. She reaches an office and begins to look through a computer. She pulls up a map with a few red dots and some schematics. She looks over then and puts a hand to her mouth. We see her quickly email them to someone, but we can't see who. She looks up from the computer and Nightshade is standing there smiling. It's not a normal smile. There's something sinister about it. Lilith says, oh, Nightshade. I was just looking something up. Nightshade says, you've betrayed me. Don't lie. It's unbecoming of us. Why? I thought you believed in the message. Lilith says, I do, to an extent. I know you're not telling me the whole truth. You're lying to us, and you won't let me read your future. Nightshade says, oh, foolish girl, I am lying to you. But if you want to read my future, go on. Read it. See what I will do to you and to your world. Nightshade holds out a hand sinisterly. Lilith Clay reaches out a shaking hand and takes it. Her eyes begin to grow wide with terror. They go stark white as she sees the future. We hear her screaming in horror. She keeps screaming and weeping until at last she slumps to the floor, a blubbering mess. She says, evil, you can't, oh God. Nightshade says, I can, and I will. We see Nightshade leading the petrified Lilith Clay through the halls by the hand. They pass Clock King. Lilith is mumbling. She says, lies. The brain, she needs it's the shadow. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Clock King says, what's happened to her? And Nightshade says, she saw something she wasn't ready for. I'm going to take her to her room so she can sleep it off. Nothing you should be worried about. Nightshade and Lilith move down the hall as Clock King watches nervously. We see his face turn to a frown. We're going to cut back to the squad in the castle. We see a bunch of VHS tapes spread across the floor. We see a copy of the movie Ghost removed from its sleeve. Chemo and Flatline are watching the movie. It's the famous scene with the clay pot. Flatline says, you know, I've seen this one before. Not really that accurate on how ghosts work. Chemo says, well, you would know. Flatline flops onto her back. The song Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers moves from the movie scene to the actual scene of our movie, playing over their dialogue. She says as if it was a thought that came out of nowhere, have you ever thought about what it would be like to be normal? Chemo says, normal? What would that even be like for us? Flatline says, I don't know. I could stop talking to the dead. You know, avoid cemeteries and stuff. If we could find a cure for you, you could leave that suit and be free. We could hold hands and touch without the metal in the way. Kima nods and says, I'd like that. Normal. Maybe we could buy a house. She says, yeah, a real boring one, somewhere out in the suburbs. Kima says, somewhere normal like Ohio or Indiana. Flatline says, well, maybe not that normal. I'm thinking more New England on the ocean. We could get married, maybe even have kids. Just one or two. Kima says, yeah, name them something plain like Mark or Mary. Flatline raises her eyebrows and says, what about Amanda? Kima says, I don't think so. The only Amanda I ever knew was a stone cold bitch. Flatline says, literally now. They both laugh. Flatline says,
I want to work a 9 to 5 at an office, gossip over the water cooler, the whole thing. You know, I've never actually had a job. Kimo nods and says, I'd like to stay with the kids, watch them grow up, cook them lunch. I was always good with kids. Flatline says, a stay-at-home dad, progressive. Kimo says, I try. Flatline says, we would be happy. And Kimo says, yeah, you almost had me believing it could happen. Flatline turns and looks at him. She says, it doesn't have to be a joke. We could do it. We could live like average people. Kimo says, come on, Nakia. It's a good dream, but I don't think we'll ever get there. Look at me. Flatline says, we will. Think about all the magic we've seen today alone. Maybe the supernatural's a way to fix you. Let's make a promise. She puts out her hand and says, whenever this is over, we're gonna be normal, no matter what it takes. Just like every other person we see on the street. Kimo nods his head and says, okay. He takes her hand. Normal. I can imagine that. The camera pans over to reveal that King Shark is standing next to them. King Shark says, I want to be normal. Kimo says, oh, Jesus, you startled me. Yeah, you can be normal too. King Shark says, I'm normal now. Good. He walks away, trying his best to act like a normal person. Kimo and Flatline both look at each other and laugh. And that's where I'm going to end the first act. Pretty good. We got quite a few deaths. I know a couple of these might make some of y'all upset, but whatever. All right, I'm going into the outro now.
All right, that's it. Yeah, I killed Boomerang again. That's right. All you Boomerang fans out there cried because this time the Boomerang isn't coming back because he got blowed up or his head got ripped off or something. I don't know. I don't read my own scripts. All right. What do you guys want? And if you guys dislike it, let me know below. I want to feed off your anger. I'm actually, you know, it's what gives me the source of my power and allows me to sustain myself. So, you know, that's nice. If you guys have any predictions about what's going to happen next or where my story is going or, you know, general death predictions, go ahead and let me know below. If you have any thoughts at all, let me know. We do have a Discord. If you want to discuss it with the other fans there, you're welcome to do so. I'm going to include a link in the description and in the comments, so you can go down there and find that. Beyond that, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you're looking for something else to watch in the interim, I've got Thunderbolts here and Deadlands over here. Alright, I'll see y'all next time. Hi, it's me, Bjorn, that one guy who uploads a script every 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks like this one. Like clockwork, because I'm very consistent, alright? Look, I've seen all your hate comments complaining about, ooh, Bjorn, why are you so consistent at putting things out, alright? Damn, what do y'all want? I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't, alright? And also, this isn't a green screen. I see you fuckers in the comments like, oh yeah, Bjorn, you're in front of a green screen. I'm not in front of a green screen. Does this look like a green screen? Good lord, people. Can't appreciate when a man hand makes a set. Okay, quick things before we get started. Welcome back to Writing the Suicide Squad 5. This is part 2, the second act, and it's a long one, so that's why I'm killing as much time as I can in this intro, to make it even longer, just to mess with y'all. A couple things before we get started. I know a lot of you who watch these videos aren't subscribed. If you wouldn't mind dropping a subscription down below, that would be awesome. You'll get updated whenever I post new videos, and it helps the channel out a lot. In addition to that, we also have a Discord. If you want to join that, a link will be in the description and in the comments. You can click on that and join. We have a lot of people in there who talk about franchises I write their own stuff. I'll take a look at things you write in there and give you feedback or whatever most of the time. Or you can just chat with me, say hello. I'm there frequently. Alright, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the episode.
Hey, just a reminder, this is part 2 of the 5th movie, which is a sequel in and of itself to 2 other movies I wrote. A lot of continuity with this one. So if you haven't watched those yet, link in the top. I don't know how you found yourself here, but welcome. You can catch up there. If you don't remember what happened, I might recommend catching up there. This is a very long episode, so settle in, guys. Let's go for it. We're going to open on Bloodsport pacing around the old castle in Scutarius. This is basically exactly where we left off in the first act. I just arbitrarily decided to cut it off here. In the background we can see Flatline, Kimo, and King Shark watching the movie from before. Bloodsport, after pacing around, says, alright, I want some answers. And since she doesn't seem to be coming out of that room, he points to Madame Xanidy's room with Katana sitting in front of it. Bloodsport says, you're going to have to give them to me. This time he looks towards Shade. Shade says, what do you want to know? I owe you that much. Bloodsport asks, that Shadow seemed interested in you most of all. Why? The other members of the squad have begun to pay attention to the exchange. All except for King Shark, who is still watching the movie and laughing. Shade says, to understand that, you'll have to understand me. I was not born with the name Shade. It is a title. I was born a paranoid schizophrenic. I saw things and heard noises that were not there. As I grew older, my illness became worse until I was a madman, unable to tell reality from illusion. It was a hell I could not escape. Harley says, yeah, I know the feeling. It's not all bad. It's pretty fun sometimes. This time, when Shade starts to talk about his backstory, we're showing it visually. We'll say Meta is extremely colorful and has very good architecture that's very odd and unusual to really distinguish it from Earth. I'd let designers go kind of crazy with whatever they can imagine. Something wacky, something almost like Dr. Seuss maybe. Shade says, I never found it to be fun. My world was very different from this one. We held science and magic on much the same pedestal. Two sides of the same coin, used in harmony with one another. Our greatest scientists and magi often collaborated together to create wonders unlike anything you've ever seen. The Duster Eyewear was one such experiment. It was created as a way to siphon madness for use in powerful magic. It had been known for some time that madness was the fuel for the greatest of magics, but they had never been able to harness it until the invention of the Madness Vest. I was selected for what was then titled Project Shade, and declared the first of the Shades. They wanted to harness madness in order to create soldiers for a war we'd been on the precipice of for some time. I was trained how to kill, and then I was given the first of the prototypes. When I wore the vest for the first time, it fed off my illness and it made me sane. I was myself for the first time in my life. The power of the insanity was greater than they anticipated, and the vest began to take on a madness of its own. It would do things without prodding or command, and I couldn't control it. Until one day it dumped me in another dimension without warning. A world of sheer pitch black without a drop of light. Flatline says, the shadow dimension. And Shade says, yes, I was alone in the dark, trapped by the only thing keeping my mind whole, when a voice reached out to me. It told me I was okay. That voice taught me how to use the Madness Vest, but before I left, she asked for help. She told me she'd been trapped there with no way to escape for a long time. Asked me to take her with me when I left. I did. When I arrived back to Meta, I'd found that I'd taken a human with me. She was perfectly normal in every way. Beautiful even. She had no memory of who or what she was, nor how she'd come to that place. And as I got to know her, we grew close. We quickly slam out of the flashback and see Harley. Oh my god, he totally fucked her. Shade says nothing. Flatline raises an eyebrow and says, oh wow, you really did. What was that even like? Shade says, normal. You don't understand. When Nightshade first crossed into my world, she had no idea what she was. She was human, smart, funny, kind. And then the shadow crept back into her, bit by bit. By the time I realized what was happening, the Nightshade I knew was gone. And it was already too late for my world. Ratcatcher says, that's so sad. Do you want a hug? The rat on her shoulder opens up its hands like it's going to hug him. Shade says, no. Ratcatcher says, do you need a hug? Shade says, still no. Ratcatcher shrugs, your loss. Shade says, I need some time to myself. These are hard things to remember. He walks off, and we see Bloodsport follow him. He catches Shade on the shoulder and pushes him to a wall out of sight of the others. He says, listen, mate, you really tried my patience. This team, I care a great deal for them. 2 of my friends died at the hands of this Nightshade, and now I find out you used to fuck her. If you get any of them hurt, I will fucking kill you. Do you understand? Shade nods. I understand. Bloodsport says, good. I hope we won't have a problem. Shade says, whatever there may have been between me and her, I promise you it is withered and gone. The things I've seen her do, you couldn't fathom. Bloodsport says, you might be surprised. Shade says, I would be. I watched her tear children apart and topple buildings with a flick of her wrist. I saw her destroy an entire world in a single day. And I cannot watch it happen again. Bloodsport says, it won't. We won't let it. Shade says, you're a good man, Dubois, and I hope you're right. I felt much the same as you before, so sure I could stop what was coming, and I was wrong. Bloodsport's phone lets out a ding. He looks down at it and is surprised. We see him open an email. It's the one Lilith Clay sent in the previous part. He opens up the file attached, and we see schematics for a machine appear. Bloodsport says, holy shit. We're gonna cut to the main chamber. We see them all standing around a table. Bloodsport says, it didn't take me long to figure this out. Look here. He pulls up a map. We see thousands of red dots all across the world. Chemo asks, what do they mean? Bloodsport points to one in Florida. They're portals. Ratcatcher says, holy shit. Harley says, that's a lot, right? Bloodsport says, a lot is an understatement. I don't even know if the Justice League could take down this many in time. God only knows where they've been. It's safe to say taking them down manually isn't an option. Kima says, how could she even do something like this? I mean, logistically. It seems impossible. Shade says, Nightshade always had a way of getting into people's minds. I reckon whoever built these didn't realize what they were doing. Flatline says, and what do these represent? She points to 3 larger blue dots. One in the United States, one in Paris, and one in Japan. Bloodsport says, I think they have something to do with these. He pulls up the set of schematics, which appear to be for some sort of massive computer. We see the whole squad studying them. Ratcatcher says, I'm going to ask the obvious question. What do these mean? Bloodsport says, I'm not sure. This isn't really my area of expertise. I can call in some people, get the price of what it might cost to hack something like this, but if they're even real, it could be a red herring. Flatline says, don't bother. I might know a guy. He's really good at this kind of shit. Bloodsport says, perfect. Can you get me in contact with him? Flatline says, yeah, I can. She spares a look for Chemo. There's just a little hiccup. He's a bit weird. Really doesn't like men. I mean, like, won't talk to them at all. If we're going to use my guy, it has to be the ladies who go. Chemo says he hates men? Flatline says, actually, he's terrified of them. Some kind of phobia or something. He was always a bit odd. Then again, he's good at what he does. Madame Xanadu emerges from her room at last. She looks tired. She has big black circles under her eyes. Katana stands from where she waits at the door. Madame Xanadu says, it sounds like you should go. Katana tries to help Madame Xanadu when she stumbles walking out of the room. She says, I'm fine, Katana. Thank you. Flatline says, okay, so me, Ratcatcher, Harley, and Dorothy will go meet my contact. It's a plan. Madame Xanadu says, you should take Katana with you. Katana looks up in confusion. I'm needed here, to watch you. Madame Xanadu says, go with them. I've seen it. You'll be needed. Katana nods slowly, not quite understanding, but accepting what her friend says. I see. I'll join them then. We can take the ring portal. King Shark walks into the room. He says, I go too. Flatline says, you can't, Nanaue. You're a man. King Shark says, I a shark. Flatline clarifies, a shark man. I think you might actually be scarier than a normal guy. King Shark says, oh, fuck! Just like he does in the Suicide Squad. He storms off and Ratcatcher giggles. It's funny every time he does that, she says. We're going to cut to Central City. We see the portal ring open, and the group of girls step out of it. They're in front of the facade to an apartment building in the middle of Central City. We see text that does say Central City, just to clarify that. Flatline says, this is it, I guess. Ratcatcher says, does your friend get scared when he looks in the mirror? Flatline says, what? Ratcatcher says, you say he's afraid of men. His mirror has got to scare him, right? Because he's a man? Flatline says, oh, I made that bit up. They enter the apartment building as the song Sunshine Superman by Donovan plays. The building is dirty and run down. Some of the lights don't work and others flicker. Flatline says, so he still lives in a shithole. Katana confusingly asks. Katana looks confused. She asks, if he isn't afraid of men, then why did you tell the others that? Well, we kinda used to date. Dorothy giggles. Harley says, oh, sneaking off to see your ex. Does Matthew know? Fallon says, no, and we're going to keep it that way. He's the exact reason I made up that bit about him not liking men. Katana says, dishonesty in a relationship is not healthy. Ratcatcher says, I don't know. I think she's fine not telling him. She could just be trying to avoid hurting his feelings. Harley says, to hell with that. I'd have them fight each other. May the best boyfriend win. Flatline says, Matthew is the best boyfriend. Trust me on that. This guy is kind of a massive dick. However, he's also very good at what he does. Ah, this is this place. She stops at the door and knocks. A young Korean man with a pair of headphones around his neck opens the door. This is his son Park. He is a character in the comics. Not really in this context, but he is a hacker and he has connections to the criminal world, if you care to look at his Wikipedia page. Beyond that, there's not really much to say about this guy. His son says, so, you came back after all. Did you miss me that much? Flatline says, ew, no. I came because I need your help. His son says, wait a minute. The great Nakia needs my help. Let me hear that one more time. Flatline says, Hassan, I need your help, you massive prick. Hassan says, I'll take that as a compliment. You always did like it. He winks, and Flatline rolls her eyes. He looks past her and sees Dorothy. Hassan says, oh shit, don't tell me she's mine. Flatline makes a disgusted face. She says, you fucking pig. Here, I need you to look at this. She hands him a flash drive. He says, whatever, come on in, I guess. He moves to a chair and plugs the flash drive into his PC. We see him pull up the schematics and files. He combs through them for a minute. Hassan says, "This is fucking legit. Real tough system. Whoever made this knows their shit. Even one could support thousands of complex systems all over the world." Flatline says, "Can you hack it?" Hassan says, "Well, maybe. The thing is on an internal network. You'd need some kind of root program on a flash drive. You'd have to manually plug it into the computer systems. And here they have 3 redundancy servers. You need to get all 3 down at once to shut down this network. What does something like this even operate?" Flatline says, "None of your business. My question stands. Can you hack it?" Hassan says, "Yeah, I can make a hack for this. But what's in it for me?" Flatline says, "Cash. 60,000 if you can hack it." Hassan says, "Give me an hour or 2. Alone." We see the squad leaving the apartment. They walk down the hall. Ratcatcher says, "You used to date that guy?" Flatline says, "I was young. Really, really young." Ratcatcher just looks at her. Flatline adds, "And stupid. Really, really stupid." Dorothy says, "Well, what are we supposed to do for 2 hours?" They step outside and see a karaoke bar across the street. It's called the Rogues Karaoke Bar. Harley says, "Anyone feel like singing?" We're going to cut back to Hassan's apartment. He studies the schematics once more. We see him smile to himself. He opens up a forum chat and writes a message. It says, "These yours?" with a picture of the schematics. We see bubbles and then a reply. "Yes." Hassan types, "I think I found your friends." We're going to cut back to the karaoke bar. It flashes with multicolored lights as the squad enters the building. Recent newspaper clippings and pictures of the Flash stopping the rogues litter the walls. The entire karaoke bar is themed to the superhero team and the superheroes who fight them. We see a cardboard cutout of Mirror Master and another one for Weather Wizard propped against the wall. We hear someone singing the song Beggin' by Mad Con very, very poorly. We're going to do a fun little montage of each of the squad members singing. Flatline and Ratcatcher actually sing pretty well. Harley is a total mess when she tries to sing. Dorothy and Katana just walk from the booth and don't sing. We see Harley randomly taking drinks from tables that people aren't looking, and she drinks a ton. Flatline says, "Wow, Harley, you're really putting those back, huh?" Harley burps. "You know, I like you, Flatline. You have cool clothes and you're funny." Flatline says, "Thanks. I think you're funny too, mostly, and I also think you should stop drinking." Harley says, "No, you don't understand. I shouldn't like you. It's a problem. Everyone I like dies. I knew this guy called Deadshot. He was a friend of mine, and then he died. The guy with the javelin and the hot accent, he died. Then there was Rick Flag. He was a really nice guy. He used to leave the squad. He even came back to save me once. Can you believe it? Someone saving somebody like me. But then he died too. And now Boomer and Blocky are gone. But I am still alive. I always survive." Ratcatcher says, "What matters is that your heart is in the right place." Harley says, "I'd sure hope it was. I just went to the doctor a month ago." Flatline says, "No. What Ratcatcher is trying to tell you is that you're trying to be good, right? That's what matters. You've gotten to live this long because you're lucky. That's all there is to it." Harley says, "Yeah, lucky. I used to think like that. I used to think maybe my life had some higher purpose, like destiny or something. Thought maybe it was divine blessing that kept me alive all this time. But it ain't a blessing, is it? To keep living on while everyone you love dies? Nah, it's a curse. Harley the funny cursed clown. Got a ring to it." Flatline says, "You're not cursed, Harley. There's no such thing." We see Katana raise an eyebrow. Flatline adds emphasis. "There is no such thing. As for your friends who are gone, well, I've seen the other side, and it's not so bad." Harley says, "Really?" And Flatline says, "Really. They're probably happier than you." Harley smiles. That actually raises her mood. She says, "You know what I need? Another drink. I'll be right back." Before Flatline can stop her, she stumbles off. Katana turns to Flatline. "You're a bad liar." Flatline looks at her and frowns. Katana says, "Harley's a good person if you can believe it. Past all the clown makeup. I appreciate what you just did." Flatline says, "It's no problem." So I'm going to explain where I've decided to take Harley. I think a lot of people nag on her for having plot armor, and yeah, it's a problem. There's something really interesting that stands out to me anyway about the idea of plot armor. She has lots of friends in this franchise, and since this is a franchise where people get killed, all her friends die, but she never does. She always survives no matter what, even against the most ridiculous of odds. And I kind of wonder what that would do to a person, right? being surrounded by people dying all the time, but you always live. And I thought that was so interesting that I decided to characterize it as Harley. So yeah, we're doing a little bit of a meta-narrative here, but I think it's a very interesting direction to take the Harley Quinn character in a way that can make her interesting again for people who have grown tired of this. And I know there's a lot of people who don't like Harley. Hopefully what I do with her going forward is interesting enough for y'all. We're going to hear the song Money Grabber by Fitz and the Tantrum start to play. Ratcatcher says, I love this song. I'm going to go dancing. I do this every mission. Ratcatcher leaves the table in a hurry and heads towards the dance floor. We're going to cut to the bar. We see Harley walk up to the bar. She asks the bartender, what's the weirdest thing you have on the menu? The bartender looks confused and says, I guess the Captain Cold is kind of weird. Harley says, I'll take 2 of those. We hear a voice ask Harley a question. It says, you look familiar. Do I know you from somewhere? Harley turns and looks, and we see Plastique sitting at the bar. Harley doesn't recognize her. They've never met. Harley says, probably. I'm kind of famous. Plastique says, really? What would I know you from? Harley says, remember that lady who robbed a bank with a pack of hyenas twice in the same week? That was me. Plastique sort of smirks and says, really? A bank robber? Like on TV? You're an actor. Harley says, yeah, sure, let's go with that. The bartender returns with her weird blue-green concoction of a drink with a cherry and a pineapple stuck in it. Harley says, it was sure nice talking to you, lady, but I gotta go. Plastique says, wait, can I buy you a drink? Harley says, I'm flattered and you're pretty hot, but I'm here with others. Plastique says, I'll buy them drinks too. Why not? Harley says, I guess that'd be okay. Plastique says, 5 more of whatever that is. Harley says, wow, 5. How'd you know? We see Plastique's face fall. She slipped up. She says, lucky guess. Harley says, really? I'm lucky too. Unfortunately. As a little callback to what she just said. Harley's too drunk to notice the slip up, really. The bartender brings the drinks on a tray and hands them to Plastique. Harley heads towards the table and Plastique follows with the drinks in her hand. As she walks, we see her touch them one by one, priming them with her explosive touch. Harley walks up to the table and says, hey guys, this is some random lady I picked up at the bar. They all look to see who it is. None of them recognize her, except for Katana. We can see recognition fall on her face. She pulls her sword out and goes for the kill. Plastique sees it coming and uses the metal drink tray to block the attack. All the drinks go flying to the floor. Harley says, what the hell, Katana? You're attacking my date. Katana says, Plastique, you're supposed to be dead. Plastique says, but I'm not. Katana leaps over the table and tries to slash Plastique again. Plastique touches her hands together and the drink glasses on the floor explode. Harley has the explosion go off in her face. We see the rest of the squad get thrown back by the blast. We follow Dorothy specifically as she's knocked to the floor and rolls. We see blood running down her face, and ringing is the only audio we can hear. The camera is blurry and shaky. Dust and smoke fills the air around her so we can't see anything. We see Sergeant Stuffy run up to her. He shakes her awake. His voice cuts through the ringing. Get the fuck up! You've got to move if you don't want to die. Dorothy stirs and sits up. She tries to stand but falls over again. She holds a hand to her head. In the background we see another explosion set off. Dorothy says, my head hurts. Sergeant Stuffy says, you've got to move, soldier! This is a war zone! Dorothy stumbles to her feet once more. She starts to move across the club. The ringing in her ears fades and we hear the song Money Grabber playing from half-broken speakers. We can't see Flatline, Ratcatcher, or Harley anywhere. Plastique stands in the center of the room. Katana makes a move to attack her, but is forced to dive away from an explosion. Dorothy moves forward towards an overturned table. She hides behind it and finds Ratcatcher. Ratcatcher immediately turns and checks on her. Are you okay? Dorothy says, I think so, but my head is spinning and I feel nauseous. Ratcatcher says, you probably have a concussion. Dorothy says, I need to help. She closes her eyes. Candlemaker, I need you. Nothing happens. Candlemaker doesn't appear. Dorothy says, he isn't coming. Ratcatcher says, you just hold still. The rats can help us. With one hand she holds up her rat summoning device, and with the other she holds Dorothy's hand. We cut to outside of the club. We see rats pouring out of the sewers. They move into the club in the hundreds. Plastique turns just in time to see them. They begin to climb up her legs. Rats explode as they touch her, but there are too many. Plastique starts to scream as the rats begin to eat her alive. She falls to the ground and the rats cover her completely. After a while, she stops moving and the rats stop exploding. Ratcatcher turns off the device. The rats all scatter away, leaving behind a bloody, half-eaten corpse. We see Flatline stand up from behind a pile of broken tables. She's got a few cuts, but is fine. Katana walks over to the body with her sword out. Flatline looks at the sword, and we can see blue-green, translucent limbs and faces trying to escape it. Flatline can see the souls trapped in the blade. This is just a fun way to remind the audience what Katana's actual power is, because we haven't really seen it in use yet. Flatline looks away and sees Dorothy. She rushes over. Dorothy, are you okay? Ratcatcher says she hit her head. Dorothy says, I'm okay, it just hurts. Katana says, Madame Xanadu can look after her back in Skataris. Ratcatcher stands up and looks around. She says, where's Harley? They look around for a moment before Katana spots her. There. We see Harley laying sideways in a pile of rubble. Katana makes for her. She turns Harley over. Harley's badly burned and bleeding from many places, but she's breathing. Barely. Katana says, she's alive. I have to get her back to Madame Xanadu. You take Harley and Dorothy. I have something I have to do. Me and Ratcatcher need to know how they were able to find us. Katana says, how are you going to find that out? Flatline says, I'm going to ask. She nods to the corpse. Katana nods in understanding. She throws a portal ring down to the floor and says, Skatarius. The ring spins on the floor and opens up a portal. Katana carries Harley through, and we see Dorothy follow her. As the portal closes, Dorothy looks back. Flatline turns back to the body. She reaches out and touches it. We see the bluish-green ghost of Plastique appear. How did you know we were here? Plastique says, go to hell. Flatline says, alright, you asked for it. Flatline reaches out a hand and touches the ghost with a finger. Plastique screams in pain. Flatline pulls her hand back. Let's try this one more time. How did you know we were here? Plastique says, we got a tip from a hacker. Flatline says, what hacker? I don't remember. He had a foreign name. Asian something. Flatline says, Hassan. That son of a bitch. Ratcatcher says, I thought you trusted him. Flatline says, well, not exactly. Apparently. Let's go say hello. She turns back to the ghost and says, I've seen the other side. Between you and me, you're gonna hate it. We see Plastique's eyes fill with fear as Flatline banishes her spirit. We see Madame Xanadu rushing to a bed where Harley Quinn has been laid. She casts some runes in the air and appears to heal Harley. We see some of the wounds close up, but not all the way. She's still badly hurt. Madame Xanadu turns to Katana. She will have to rest. She is gravely hurt, and I was barely able to save her. Katana nods and says, I understand. I will let no one disturb her. Xanadu says, be on your guard. The future is in flux between disaster and salvation, and my cards cannot fully see it. I need time to read the cards again. I have to read the cards again. Katana nods. Then I will stand guard and keep the others out. Katana walks out and Kimo tries to stop her. He asks, where's Flatline? What happened? Katana just says, Flatline is fine. We were ambushed. And Kimo says, by who? Katana asks, who do you think? We're going to cut back to Hassan's apartment. Flatline kicks down the door. She says, Hassan, you son of a fucking bitch. You sold us out. Hassan says, look, Nakia, I can explain. Flatline puts a knife into the table next to him. I don't want your bullshit. I want fucking answers. This thing in the schematics. Can you hack it? Hassan says, no. Flatline pulls the knife from the table. Then I guess I don't need you anymore. Hassan says, wait. I know who can. Flatline says, I'm listening. Hassan says, LexCorp. They have an invasive hacking AI. They try to keep it under wraps, but anyone who's anyone in the industry knows. They say you can plug it into any computer and it'll hack the whole system. I've heard there's not even a firewall out there that can stop it. Flatline says, is that everything you know? Hassan says, that's all, honestly. These people you're fighting, they'll know about it and they'll try to stop you. They were going to pay me a fortune for you. I don't know what you did to them, but they seriously hate you. Flatline looks at him and shakes her head. You know, you're a sack of shit. Hassan shakes his head in agreement. Flatline says, relax, dickhead. I'm not going to kill you. He lets out a sigh of relief. Flatline says, I'm just going to hurt you. She stabs a knife through his hand. Hassan screams. Flatline looks at him and says, you don't fucking sell anyone else out ever again or I'll come knocking. Come on, Ratcatcher. We're leaving. She pulls her knife free and wipes the blood off it before putting it back into her belt. We're going to cut back to Skatarius. We see Flatline standing around the table. The rest of the squad circles her. Kimo keeps looking over at her nervously. Bloodsport says, so, that's what your guy said, huh? Seems doable. Flatline says, doable. We're talking about LexCorp headquarters. The place is basically a fortress. I knew a couple of guys who tried to rob it, and they're corpses now. It's suicide. Ratcatcher says, that's kind of our thing. King Shark keeps looking back and forth from them all. He acts like he understands what they're saying, but it's very clear he doesn't. Bloodsport says, we can do this. I'll take command on this one. I know the LexCorp building well. Chemo says, you do? Bloodsport says, I used to do work for Lex Luthor. Flatline says, really? Like what? He says, shooting Superman. Ratcatcher says, that was you? You never told me. Bloodsport says, you never asked. The point of it is, I know the building. I've been in it a couple of times, and my name can still probably get us through the front doors. Flatline says, okay, so we walk into one of the most heavily guarded places on Earth, and then we try to reach one of the 4 most secure servers in the world to steal a top secret hacking software we don't understand, all without triggering alarms. I don't know how we're supposed to do all that without dying. Ratcatcher says, the breaking in without triggering alarm parts will be pretty easy. My rats can take care of the electrical security. I may even be able to get a security badge or 2. Bloodsport says, the rest of us can take care of any guards we cross paths with. I think this is possible, honestly. Chemo asks, what about Nightshade? They'll know where we're going. If she tries to stop us, she'll kill us all. Remember what she did to Boomerang? Shade finally speaks up from his spot in the corner. I'll distract her. If I call her, she'll come. I can keep her attention for an hour, probably. Flatline says, even if we get the AI on a drive and escape, we'll still have to infiltrate Nightshade's computer system. God only knows what she'll have protecting it. Beyond herself. I just don't know if we can do this, guys. Chemo says, do we even have a choice, Nikia? What's the alternative? Letting the world end? Flatline nods. Fuck it, I'm in. If it really is this or the entire world, we don't really have a choice. Bloodsport says, then that's that. King Shark says, I go. LexCorp no scare me. I strong. Chemo says, as I said, I'm in. I prefer not to see the world end. Bloodsport nods his head. The world's always going to end because of something. It never does. Chemo says, I hope you're right, Dubois. Bloodsport says, get some sleep. We're going to do this in the morning. We'll need everyone well rested. Chemo and Ratcatcher head towards the hall. Flatline starts to leave, but notices Dorothy Spinner approaching Bloodsport. She stops to watch. Dorothy has a bandage wrapped around her head. She says, I want to come. Bloodsport says no. Dorothy says, but I can help. Bloodsport sighs. You could. You may even be the strongest here. But you're hurt, kid. I can't worry about you and the mission at the same time. Dorothy says, it was just a bump on the head. I promise I'm fine. I have to keep you all safe. You said I was strong. You need me. Bloodsport asks, do you trust me? Dorothy desperately says, I can help. Bloodsport says, do you trust me? Dorothy says, yeah. He says, then trust me to bring everyone out of this safely. You promise you'll be okay, she asks. Bloodsport says, I promise. Here, I found something for you. He hands her a box of comic books. They're a bit old, but I thought you might enjoy them still. Dorothy takes the box with a smile. She says, thank you. She sets the box down, then hugs Bloodsport. He looks a bit surprised. He awkwardly half hugs back. He says, now go to bed. I don't want you to reopen your wound. That's an order. Dorothy nods and takes her comic books back down the hall. Flatline approaches Bloodsport. She says, I was watching that. You know you're good with her. Bloodsport says, who? Flatline says, Dorothy. Bloodsport says, oh, she reminds me of myself in a way. She had parents who hurt her for their own pleasure. And now she's a killer. I just want a better life for her than this. You know, the one I never got. Flatline asks, you have kids of your own? Bloodsport says, a daughter. I did a shit job taking care of her. I was a bad father like my old man, watching over Dorothy and the others. It feels like a second chance to not be such a fuck up. Flatline looks surprised. She says, you know, you remind me of another guy I used to know. Dorothy's seen a lot of shit. I think we all have. But I think more than anything, she just wants to be loved. Bloodsport nods and says, go get some sleep. You're gonna need it. We're gonna cut to Chemo's bedroom. We see Chemo half asleep laying in bed. We see it sags a bit under the weight of his giant metal suit. We see his door crack open. Flatline enters the room. She shuts the door. He looks up when he sees her. She asks, you mind if I join you? Chemo says, no, awkwardly. She slides in the bed next to him and wraps her arms around him. We see her fingers touch his metal suit. He says, that can't be comfortable. Cold metal, you know. Flatline says, actually, it might be the most comfortable place in the world right now. Chemo asks her, you okay? And Flatline says, honestly, no. I'm scared, Matthew. Chemo nods. He says, I'm scared too. All of this is so new to me. I'm not like the rest of you. I'm not cut out for this. Flatline says, that's not true. Chemo says, it is. I was just a normal guy. You trained with dead martial artists to learn how to kill for years. Bloodsport's been a mercenary for God knows how long, and Shade's from another planet or something. So of course I'm scared. But it doesn't matter. We have to do this. The world needs us, and we're the only ones who can. I can't afford to be afraid. Flatline says, "You're brave, you know. Hardly a normal guy. You're a badass." She trails off and then says, "And I love you." Kimo looks surprised for a second. She's never actually said that before. He thinks about it and then says, "I love you too." The first time they've said it to each other. We see them drift off to sleep in each other's arms. We're going to cut to LexCorp headquarters. We see a van parked in the parking lot. We cut to the inside of the van. We see Ratcatcher open the back door and a group of rats climb into the car. They're carrying 2 security passes on their backs. Bloodsport sees them, picks them up, and studies them. He says, "Perfect. Shade, do you have eyes on the Nightshade?" We're going to cut to Shade. He's in an alleyway. He says, "I'm in position, and I've summoned her. We'll see if she comes." Cut back to the van. Bloodsport says, "Good enough. We go. Ratcatcher, get your rats in position." She says, "They're ready whenever we are. They'll destroy any checkpoint you cross or door alarms we may open." Bloodsport says, "All right then. Let's go." He throws open the back doors to the van and the team hops out. We hear the song "Trouble Coming" by Royal Blood play as we get our squad team-up shot. The very strange assortment of people enter the lobby of the LexCorp building. They approach the secretary in the LexCorp building. The secretary immediately looks confused at these weird gaggle of people who've shown up. He says, "Sir, how can I help you?" Bloodsport says, "I need to speak to your boss. Tell him Bloodsport is here." "The boss? You mean Lex Luthor?" Bloodsport nods and says, "The one and only." The secretary says, "I can't really call him." And then Bloodsport says, "Well then call who can." We do a little jump cut. We see them sitting awkwardly in the waiting room. King Shark, all of them in a line. Another woman comes out. Blonde, short hair, manager of some sort. She looks at them and is taken aback. Bloodsport says, "You know who I am?" He looks at her name tag. "Mary." Mary says, "You're Bloodsport." Bloodsport says, "I am. I have a proposition for Luthor. Trust me. He'll want to hear me and my friends out." Mary says, "All right, come with me." They follow her as they pass the first security checkpoint. As she passes a closet, Bloodsport hits her with a taser, then drags her into the closet, locking her in. He takes her security card. He walks across the hall and uses it to open a door. We see a guard sitting in a chair in front of a bunch of cameras. Bloodsport hits him with the taser too. He flops over. We see Bloodsport drag him to the closet, lock him in as well. Bloodsport says, "All right, we got a limited window to do this, and only 3 security cards. Ratcatcher, you take this one and watch the cams. You're our eyes." Ratcatcher says, "Okay." Kimo and Flatline, take this one. Ratcatcher will lead you to a terminal. Flatline asks, "What about you?" Bloodsport says, "I'll take Nanawe. I already know where a terminal is. Get that program on a drive, and we get out. We all know the plan. Let's stick to it." Flatline nods. We follow Kimo and Flatline as they leave the cam room. Ratcatcher talks to her through her ear. Ratcatcher says, "Can you hear me?" Flatline says, "Yeah." Ratcatcher says, "You two are going to take a right." Flatline says, "Got it." She heads down the hall. Ratcatcher says, "Now a left, then another right." We see them start down the hall. We're going to cut to Shade in the alley. He stands in the empty alleyway. Suddenly, all the shadows around him begin to contort in the wrong direction. Nightshade steps out from Shade's own shadow. She runs a hand across his cheek, then looks him in the eyes and smiles. She says, "Your vest called for me. Have you come to surrender at last?" Shade says, "No. We need to talk." Nightshade says, "About what?" Shade says, "Us. You told me you still love me. Is that true?" We're going to cut back to Flatline and Kimo moving through the halls of the building. Flatline says, "This place is like a maze. Where am I going next?" Ratcatcher says, "Take a left." She says, "Wait a minute." We see guards on her monitor approaching them from behind. Ratcatcher says, "You're being followed." It's too late. The guards spot them and open fire. Kimo scoops up Flatline and blocks the bullets. Flatline says, "Well, isn't this romantic?" Kimo says, "You go. Get the drive made. I'll take care of these guys." Flatline nods and runs down the hall as Kimo tanks the bullets. He turns towards the guards. We see the fingers of his suit begin to hiss open. We're going to cut back to Bloodsport. He approaches a set of double doors. He says, "This is it." He turns back and finds King Shark is gone. He says, "Nanawe, where'd you go?" We cut to 2 minutes earlier. We see Bloodsport moving down the hall. He's followed by King Shark. They pass an open door and King Shark looks inside. He laughs to himself and walks in. We see Bloodsport keep walking forward. We see the inside of the room is filled with small tanks of water. Small cat sharks swim back and forth in the tank. The notes on the wall are for some sort of research on lateral lines. We can see diagrams explaining the shark's ability to detect movements in the water. And next to it is a schematic for some sort of suit. King Shark laughs to himself and bends down and looks at the tank. He smiles and says, "Small sharks." We cut to the present. Bloodsport looks back and forth and just says, "Fuck it, I'll find him later." He opens the double doors and enters the room. It's full of men and women in white lab coats. They spot him and look confused. Bloodsport pulls one of his pistols off his chest and fires a shot into the air. He puts it back. He yells, "Everyone out!" All the scientists flee the room except for one. She stares at Bloodsport with hate. We recognize her as Grace Baleen. They've already infiltrated LexCorp. Grace says, "Robert Dubois, Bloodsport, the leader of the Suicide Squad." Bloodsport says, "Do I know you?" She says, "No, but you knew my son, Mortimer Baleen." Bloodsport says, "I don't know him either." Grace says, "No? Well, maybe you only knew him by that silly little name he always used, Eel." Bloodsport says, "I don't know what you're on about, but you've got the wrong guy." Orca shakes her head. "I don't think I do." She begins to contort and twist her limbs. We hear bones cracking as she begins to transform into Orca. Bloodsport says, "What the fuck?" He begins to transform his gun from various pieces of armor. He's built out his whole rifle like the one he uses on Starro briefly. Orca finishes her transformation. She looks towards him and shows her teeth. They're dagger sharp like a whale's teeth now. Bloodsport opens fire, blasting her with a hail of gunfire. She seems unfazed. Even as wounds open up across her body, she continues to move forward towards him. Bloodsport runs out of ammo. He throws away his rifle and pulls out the pistols hidden in his pecs. He puts 3 rounds into her before she's on him. She swipes a clawed hand at him, but Bloodsport rolls out of the way. He fires the pistol twice more before Orca launches towards him again. Bloodsport quickly pulls a switch on his arm and a plume of fire erupts from the flamethrower there. It hits Orca, driving her back and burning her skin. She says, "I'm gonna crush you." Orca rushes him again. This time he can't dodge. She snags him by the neck and hoists him up. "Mortimer was a stupid boy." She slams him against the wall. "But he was my stupid boy. My son. Almost 17 and your people blew his fucking head off." Bloodsport says, "That wasn't me." Orca says, "They told me. Told me you were the team leader." Bloodsport pulls his sword out of his back and stabs her in the arm. Orca drops him to the floor. Bloodsport barely rolls out of the way as she slams a fist towards him. It smashes through the floor. She immediately pulls it free and charges Bloodsport as he struggles to stand. Grabbing him again, he uses his sword to stab her all the way through the shoulder. Orca doesn't even react. She hoists him up and slams him to the floor. Bloodsport groans in pain. Orca bends to a knee above him. He had dreams. Things he'll never do now. She punches him hard. His mask cracks. "He was kind." Another punch. Orca says, "He was so young and he died in agony. And for what?" Another punch. Bloodsport's mask shatters. Orca says, "I've waited a long time for this. I'm going to kill every single bastard on your Suicide Squad." She hits him again. Maybe then he'll be able to rest. We see Bloodsport's face. It's a ruin. Blood gurgles from his mouth. Bloodsport tries to pull his pistol out and shoot her, but she catches it, turning it towards him and shooting him in the chest. Bloodsport lets out a howl of pain through his broken mouth. Orca says, "You'll all pay." She lowers her mouth towards him, opening it up to reveal razor-sharp dagger teeth. She's going to bite his head off. She's interrupted when King Shark lumbers into the room awkwardly. Orca picks Bloodsport up, casually throws him against the wall. He slumps down, covered in his own blood. King Shark's lips pull up, revealing shark teeth. "You hurt my friend!" He rushes Orca and knocks her back, and then bites her with his jaws. Blood runs from her shoulder as he sinks his teeth in deep. Orca reaches up and jams his eye. He lets out a howl and falls backwards. Orca picks up King Shark and begins to slam him into the floor over and over again. King Shark flips her over and begins to punch her in the face before slamming her head into the ground. They continue to roll around on the floor, beating and clawing and biting each other in a vicious fight until the floor gives out beneath them and they both plummet down a level. We're going to cut to 5 minutes earlier. We see Flatline moving through a hall. She enters her targeted computer room that she was being led to by Ratcatcher's rat. She says, "Bingo." She uses her lab She uses the lab badges they took and unlocks the system. She plugs in her flash drive and we see her shifting through files. She finally finds what she's looking for, a file labeled Project Hardic. She starts the download. We see it's taking around 3 minutes to complete. She begins to pace around the room nervously. She says, come on, come on, come on. We see the percentage begin to slowly tick up. 94, 95, 96. Suddenly there's a crash and King Shark comes flying through the ceiling. Orca lands next to him. They begin to fight again very quickly. We see King Shark get thrown against the computer, destroying it. We see pieces of the computer go everywhere. A piece with the flash drive and slides across the floor. We're not even sure if the download is completed yet. King Shark gets up and goes at Orca once more, but he's outmatched. He may be tougher, but Orca is smarter. She beats him methodically with skill and systematic fighting. Orca manages to trick King Shark into charging out a window. He falls 10 stories to the concrete below. We see Flatline quietly moving towards the flash drive. Orca hasn't seen her yet, and she wants to keep it that way. She reaches the flash drive and pulls it free. It's intact. She takes a step towards the exit and steps on a piece of broken glass. She moves towards the exit and steps on a piece of glass. It shatters. Orca looks up and sees her. She pulls her lips back into a snarl. Flatline says, fuck. She starts to run as fast as she can down the hall. We see the lights flickering as the power fails from the damaged computer. Red, then bright, then red, then bright. In the background we see Orca moving towards her, getting closer and closer and closer. She's more of a monster than a human at this point. Flatline trips over a piece of rubble and falls in the middle of a four-way junction. Orca's on her now. Orca slowly lumbers up towards her, getting closer and closer. She chuckles to herself. Another Suicide Squad member to kill. Flatline starts to try to pull out her knife, but it won't do any good and she knows it. Right as Orca is about to bear down on her, we see Chemo come running down the hall. He tackles Orca, knocking her down the other hall. He says, go! Get the flash drive! I'll hold her off! Flatline runs down the other direction, leaving Chemo to fight Orca. We follow Flatline as she runs down the flashing red halls. She taps her ear and gets into her comms. Ratcatcher, I need directions to the other terminal. Ratcatcher says, on it. She holds up the rat device and we see a rat appear in front of Flatline. It waves to her. Flatline says, okay. She follows the rat as it leads her to the terminal. Flatline enters the room with another terminal. She smiles and plugs in her flash drive. She starts the download. The camera begins to slowly pan out until we see a man in a brown trench coat enter the room quietly. We hear a slight ticking play in the background. We're going to cut to Secretarius. We see Dorothy reading a comic on her bed. She kicks her feet happily. Suddenly, the door to her closet opens. She looks up and we see a pair of skeletal fingers gripping the door. A set of vibrant green eyes glow in the darkness. Dorothy, something terrible is going to happen. You're almost too late. His hands creep back into the darkness and his eyes wink out. Dorothy immediately jumps to her feet. She opens the closet door and finds it empty. She nods as if all this makes sense and then runs out of the room. We see Madame Xanadu flip a tarot card. Madame Xanadu is flipping tarot cards. We see a few random ones scattered on the table. It's the last one. She closes her eyes nervously and then flips it. It's a Grim Reaper. She lets out a sad gasp. The camera moves out of the door and we see Dorothy run up to Katana, who's sitting in front of the room where Madame Xanadu is. She says, we have to go. Something bad is going to happen. Katana says, you're supposed to stay here. You're not going to trick me. I was given orders. Dorothy says, you don't understand. It was the skeleton man. He only comes when something is going to go wrong. They're all in danger. Katana says, they are capable. They will be fine. You just had a nightmare. Dorothy says, no, you don't understand. Dorothy notices the portal ring on the floor. She grabs it quickly and runs. Katana follows behind her. Dorothy sees a crack in the wall and climbs through. Katana says, no, Dorothy, it's too dangerous. You have to stay here. Dorothy says, they're in danger, not me. She spins the ring on the floor and yells, LexCorp. A portal opens. Dorothy jumps through and then snags the ring from the other side. We see Chemo fighting Orca. They enter a room full of cowering scientists. Orca tries and fails to damage his suit with her fists. Chemo starts to punch her as well and manages to knock her back with the force of his suit. She looks ragged and beaten but keeps going. She's driven by revenge. Chemo holds his hands out. He's going to open his suit, and then he sees the scientists. He'll kill them all if he opens his suit. They'll get hurt, die horrible deaths, and they're innocent. He lowers his fingers and forms a fist. He's gonna fight her the old-fashioned way. He runs at her and throws a punch. Orca catches it and throws a punch of her own, striking him hard in his helmet. We see Chemo's head hit the back of his metal suit. He stumbles back but regains himself, shaky on his feet. He runs at Orca and tackles her to the floor. He hits her in the head twice before she gets a hit on his helmet once more. We hear the glass of his helmet strain. If she keeps this up, she'll break it. Kimo realizes what's at stake. You have to stop. You'll kill everyone. I'm radioactive. Orca smiles. She says, I know who you are. Radioactive. The whole squad's in this building, are they not? You're perfect. She hits the glass again, and we see a small crack start to form. It hasn't broken the seal. Kimo kicks her with his robotic legs, sending her flying. You're insane. You'll kill everyone. Orca picks up a table and throws it at Kimo. He turns his head so it hits him on the metal side, not the glass. The force of it is enough to knock his head hard into the metal, and he falls unconscious to the floor. Orca picks up a metal chair and lumbers towards him. For Mortimer. Suddenly, we see the portal ring open in the center of the room, and Dorothy appears. Sergeant Stuffy's on her shoulder. Dorothy cries, Go find Bloodsport. The bear hops down and runs off. Dorothy looks to where Kimo is laying, and she makes a decision. Candlemaker, I need you. We hear a sinister cackle and hear looming footsteps from down the hall. Orca charges Dorothy. Dorothy holds her arms over her eyes and braces, but nothing hits her. She moves her arms and looks. We see a large set of cartoon tentacles grabbing onto Orca and squeezing her tight. They drag her back away from Dorothy. Behind them, we see a full-on cartoon octopus. I want this to be like a literal animated octopus, like in live action. Maybe it's something like what's happening in The Boys with Black Noir. I think it would be really funny to have each of the imaginary friends have a completely different aesthetic. This is Dorothy's imaginary friend, who I'm calling Steven the Octopus. He talks like a cartoon, so he says, Well, hiya, Dorothy. Don't worry, I got this under wraps. The octopus laughs to himself. She's sure in a sticky situation. Orca says, Let go of me, you fucking freak. Orca tries to break free, but fails. We see Kimo look up from where he got knocked down. He sees the octopus. He goes, What the hell? Suddenly, we hear a thumping. Candlemaker is getting closer. We see him appear down the hall. His razor-sharp claws grip the concrete ceiling as he pulls himself through the opening to the room. He says, Dorothy, you called me. Dorothy says, I need you to stop her. She points to Orca. Orca is still struggling to get free. She bites one of the tentacles, making it fall away. She's beginning to break free. You see Candlemaker slowly move towards her. He looks exactly like he does in his previous appearances. He begins to laugh sinisterly. What did you do? He asks Orca. At last he reaches her. He holds up his dripping wax claws and slowly slides them deep into Orca's chest. He pushes the claw all the way through her until it comes at her back. Blood runs all around her. With his other hand, he grabs her face and spills molten hot wax across it. Orca's screams fill the room until they fade away as she dies. Dorothy lets out a sigh, and all the imaginary friends vanish. Kimo stands up and walks over to her. He says, You okay? Dorothy says, Yeah. I just don't like having to kill. Kimo says, I know the feeling. Suddenly, Sergeant Stuffy enters the room. He says, Dorothy, you have to come with me, somberly. Dorothy looks back and forth and says, Okay. She starts to follow him. Kimo says, I'm going to go find Flatline. I'll meet up with you later. We're going to cut back to Flatline. She's noticed Clock King. I was hoping I'd see you again. She lets her knife rope fall from her sleeve. She starts spinning it in a circle. We hear the faint ticking grow a little bit louder. It plays in the background as Clock King speaks. We don't have to fight. I never wanted to hurt you. Any of you. Just hand over the drive. Flatline says, You burned that bridge when you murdered Croc. Clock King says, So be it. For what it's worth, I'm sorry, but I'll do what has to be done. Clock King slides a gun out of his holster. Flatline says, So you're gonna put me down like you put him down? With a fucking bullet. Clock King tosses away the gun with a lack of concern. He reaches towards his belt again, and this time, he pulls a knife. The ticking grows louder. The two circle each other, waiting for the others to make the first move. We can see the hate burning in Flatline's eyes. She makes the first move, swinging her knife rope towards Clock King. He catches the attack with the blade of his own knife and deflects it. Flatline tries to pull it back towards her. Just like last time they fought, Clock King tries to grab the rope out of the air. But Flatline is prepared for it. She makes a movement with her hand, and the rope shifts the direction of the knife. It slices Clock King across the face, leaving a bleeding gash. This time, we hear Flatline's theme above all. Clock King growls and then rushes her. She sends the knife rope his way, but he dodges. He makes a couple of quick stabs towards her, but she dodges or blocks them. She retaliates with a kick to Clock King's side. He grunts. They break apart, circling each other again. You've gotten better, he says. You've gotten worse, Flatline says. Clock King says, No, I've just been going easy on you. No more. We hear his ticking grow even louder. This time it's a one-sided fight. Even though Flatline is very good and gets a few hits in, Clock King dominates her. It's like he's a demon. He punches and kicks relentlessly, all while dodging most of her blows. His timing is perfect. Flatline is winded. We see she has a black eye and that blood runs from her nose and mouth from all the hits she's taken. She lets out a scream and charges Clock King. He grabs her arm and pins her to the ground. He pulls his knife out and tries to stab her in the skull. Flatline catches the knife and tries to hold it back. Clock King pushes the blade closer to her eye. Bit by bit, the ticking grows louder. Flatline kicks her legs up and knocks the knife aside. We see it carve a deep gash into the concrete next to her. She flips herself up until she's on top of him and pushes him down to the ground, all in one motion. She knocks his knife away with a kick. Now that she has him pinned, she punches him in the face over and over. Clock King is stronger than she is, however. He picks himself up with her on top of him and then throws her. She skids to the floor. Clock King stops and picks up his knife. The ticking is deafening now. He approaches Flatline. She tries to stand up. She's on all fours when he reaches her. Clock King kicks her in the gut and sends her to the floor again. He holds the knife up for a killing blow and then stops. He lets it fall to his side and then puts it back into his sheath. He says, "Don't get up. You don't have to die for nothing." She tries to stand and fails. Flatline says, "Afraid to kill me? You pussy. I'll kill you for what you did." Clock King says, "I know I deserve it, but I still have things I have to do. I can't let you yet." He picks up the flash drive she made and takes it. He smashes the console of the computer until it's unusable. He picks up his gun and slides it back into his holster, and then he turns like he's going to say something to her. He doesn't. He leaves, and we see Flatline collapse, completely defeated. She says, "Fuck." Flatline closes her eyes and then opens them as we hear a noise. Well, we can assume that some time has passed, like she passed out for a second. Chemo finds Flatline on the floor. He helps her sit up. Flatline says, "I had him, Matthew. It was right fucking there, and I lost." He hugs her with his metal suit. Again, we see her hands cling to the metal, still unable to touch him truly. Chemo says, "You're okay. That's all that matters." Flatline says, "No, it isn't. He wrecked the computer and took the drive." Chemo says, "We'll find another way." Flatline stops and thinks about it. She says, "Well, yeah." She reaches into her pocket and pulls out the other flash drive. "He only took one. I may have gotten the download on this one. I don't know. I got interrupted." Chemo says, "See? Another way." Flatline says, "Maybe. I gotta get up." We see Chemo help her to her feet, and they begin to limp off away from the room. We're gonna cut to Shade in the alley. Nightshade smiles, contemplating his question about love. She says, "I do in my own way. I only want you to feel the same." Shade shakes his head. "See, that's what confuses me. Because you never loved me. That was her. The other Nightshade. The one that I knew before you took over. I think she's still in there, somewhere deep down. But I think she wants you to stop this. All of it. I think you can be that person again." Nightshade smiles a cat-like smile. "I can't be that person anymore, Shade. That person was the lie." Shade says, "I don't believe you. You say you love me, and that's why you haven't killed me yet. I think she's still in there, even if she's only a whisper." Nightshade smiles again. She says, "You think I won't kill you? You are gravely mistaken, Shade. Just because I don't want to, doesn't mean I won't." Shade says, "Then do it. I came to end this. To end you." The shapes on his duster begin to move. Nightshade laughs. She holds up her hands, and the shadow of all the nearby buildings and trees are drawn to her. She floats off the ground, held up by the tendrils of shadow. Nightshade says, "You're so sure of yourself, confident you can stop me. Sure, I am good, deep down, completely unaware of how foolish you truly are. Go on, Shade. Do what you promised. Stop me." She turns, leaves the alleyway, floating above his head, and then begins to approach a convenience store across the street. She lowers herself to the ground and approaches the entrance. Shade says, "What are you doing?" She doesn't answer. He chases after her. She reaches for the door slowly, with a knowing look for him. Shade grabs her shirt. He says, "Stop it." Shadows lurch off her back and send him flying. We see Shade catch himself with colorful energy leaking from his duster. Nightshade enters the store. Shade says, "No!" He runs after her. We see the inside of the store. A bell rings as Nightshade enters. We see the shadows cast by the shelves begin to change directions. The worker at the front greets her without looking up from reading a magazine. He says, "Hi, welcome to Quick Mart." We see a man looking at beers and a mother and her little girl picking out snacks. Nightshade casually strolls towards the man looking at beer. He sees her approaching in the reflection of the glass refrigerator and turns to look at her. He says, "What do you want?" Nightshade holds up a hand, and the man is torn apart by shadows. Blood sprays across the wall. Shade enters the store just in time to see the kill. He says, "Stop it!" Nightshade refuses to talk to him. She turns towards the mother and her child as they try to run out of the store. Shadows begin to leap towards them. We see Shade throw up a colorful shield of energy around them, just as the shadows hit. The mom and her child cower and scream. Nightshade finally acknowledges Shade. She says, "You said you could stop me. You think you can save everyone? Do you realize yet how wrong you are?" As Shade fights to save the two people, shadows snake around to the cashier and rip him clean in two. Shade says, "No!" Nightshade says, "I just don't think you've gotten the message yet. Let me spell it out for you." The shadows double their efforts on his shield. It's too much and it buckles. The shadows swallow the mother and her daughter. We hear the sickening sounds of crunching bone, and the screaming stops. We see blood leak from below the darkness. Shade falls to his knees. Nightshade says, "Do you understand now? You couldn't stop me if you wanted. The Nightshade you knew is gone. She was never real to begin with. I only care about you so much. Do not disappoint me again, Shade." Suddenly she falls to one knee. She holds a hand to her head. We see flashes of Orchid dying and of purple leaving her eyes. Nightshade says, "You tricked me. This was a distraction." She vanishes into the shadows, leaving Shade alone amongst the bodies, crying. We're going to cut to Dorothy. She runs into the room where Bloodsport is injured. He still sits slumped against the wall. Dorothy says, "Hold on, I'm going to get you help," as she slides to his side. Bloodsport says, "I told you to stay behind. How are you here?" Dorothy says, "You needed my help, so I stole a ring." Bloodsport laughs a little. It reminds him of his daughter stealing the watch. He says, "I don't think I'm going to make it, kid." Dorothy says, "No, you're going to be okay. It's going to be fine." Bloodsport says, "I haven't done much right in my life." He coughs up blood. "But this team, what we do, it's good." Ratcatcher enters the room. Ratcatcher says, "I lost comms. Is everything?" She trails off when she sees Bloodsport. She says, "Oh no." Bloodsport says, "I'm fine. It's okay." Ratcatcher begins to check his wounds. "You're not okay. These are too deep." Bloodsport says, "Look at me. I'm fine. I think I'm just gonna rest." Dorothy says, "No, we have to get you out of here. I gave the portal ring to Chemo, but we can find him." Bloodsport says, "I've been on a lot of battlefields, kid. I know a fatal wound when I see one." Ratcatcher begins to cry. Bloodsport says, "I need you two to do something for me. Cleo, what we built was good. I want you to keep it going. You're in charge now." He hands her his transforming pistols that he keeps on his, pecs or whatever. "You always had a better heart than me. I don't think you'll muck it up. The leader of the Suicide Squad. Can you do that?" Ratcatcher nods. She says, I could do it." Bloodsport says, "Good. Go and find Chemo. It won't be long until LexCorp figures out what's happening. You need to get out of here." She leaves to go find Flatline and Chemo. Bloodsport turns to face Dorothy. She's sobbing now. "You promised me you were going to come back." Bloodsport says, "You're going to be okay. You're tough." Dorothy says, "I don't want you to go. I won't know what to do without you." Bloodsport says, "That's... ah!" He's hit by pain. "I know. But you have so much potential. You'll know what's right. I see such greatness in you. All of you. Don't be like me. Be better." And he fades away and dies. Yeah, I killed Bloodsport. I did the funny. Get wrecked, nerds who like Bloodsport. I saw your polls. You thought I wouldn't notice that Clock King was the number 1 on the polls? You fools. I know you're just trying to get him killed. So I went for number 2 instead. This is your own fault. You did this. Feel the guilt. This is Sportsmaster all over again. Way to go, guys. As Dorothy cries, the camera fades to black. When it opens again, we see Dorothy sitting on her bed in Scatarius. We see her staring at the box of comics. She picks up the box and throws it across the room, and then begins to cry. We see a hand touch her shoulder. She looks up, and we see a familiar face we weren't expecting. It's Acid/Condiment King. Dorothy says, "You." The imaginary Acid says, "Me." Dorothy says, "You're not real. Go away." Imaginary Acid says, "Is that really what you want? You're the one who brought me to life." Dorothy says, "No. I should have stopped this. I was warned and I still let him die." Acid says, "You did what you could. That's what matters. You can't always save everyone." Dorothy says, "I could have saved you. If only I'd realized what I could do sooner. I let you die and I let Bloodsport die." Acid says, "You did save me. You probably didn't even realize that. You gave me a chance to be better than I've been in a long time. You gave that to Bloodsport too. You make people better, Dorothy. You could help so many people. Don't give up. We see Clock King arriving back at the base with Nightshade. She sits in a chair and smiles. I allowed myself to be distracted. I won't let it happen again. How was the mission? I hope it was a success. Clock King says, we lost Orca. Nightshade says, a sad loss. Miss Baleen will be missed. Was your mission a success? Clock King says, I recovered the flash drive and destroyed it. Any computer with the AI was also destroyed. The Suicide Squad left empty-handed. Nightshade says, well done. In a day's time, the world will be better, and your sister will live again. I hope so. What happened to Lilith? He asks. Nightshade frowns. She lost herself. I've locked her up in her room for her own sanity. You may go to her if you wish. Clock King nods. He says, you say you want to build a better world when this is done. But what does a better world look like? Nightshade smiles. She says, a world in which no one has to suffer. No more starvation, no more corruption, no more war. Just perfection. I see a truly pure world, freed from the flaws of humanity. Clock King asks, you really think something like that is possible? Nightshade says, I know it is. I've seen it before. And that's where we're going to end the second act. The third act is going to be our big blowout, as well as some of our big character moments. Real long episode, guys, but thanks for bearing with me so far.
Wow, that was it. That was the big one, the big penultimate episode. The sequel will come out sooner rather than later. I did do the Bloodsport killing thing, which was funny. And unrelated to that, I have a poll with some characters on there. Go ahead and tell me which ones are your favorites, guys. And don't bother lying or trying to get a certain character killed. I'm smarter than you. I saw past that, you nerds. Alright, I knew what you were up to. Okay, you can't fool me, nerds. I said that twice. I don't even care. If you're looking for something else to watch because you need more content, I've got Writing a Harry Potter series right here. This is the one where I take a look at writing a Harry Potter murder mystery. It's very fun so far. And then right here, I've got the Thunderbolts, a completed series where I write a Thunderbolts movie, which is similar to the Suicide Squad, but also very different. So if you're into the more comic book shit, there you go. Alright guys, I'll see you. Hello, I'm Bjorn, and welcome back to Bjorn Does Movies. And today, guys, we finally made it. We're at the finale of my entire Suicide Squad series. This is the last one I'm ever going to make, probably, 99% sure, unless I come up with something really cool, in which case we're definitely going to do that. But no, this is really it, guys. I probably will never write another one of these. So, before we start, if y'all enjoy these videos, remember to give me a like and subscribe to see more stuff. You don't want to miss anything from me. Because my stuff is sort of like series, you want to make sure you're up to date on every episode. And if you like these videos, go check out some of my other stuff. Alright, let's get right into it. No more waiting. Here's the finale.
Hey, just a quick reminder that this is part 3 of the 5th movie, and there are 2 other movies before this one. So really, you're actually quite literally at the end of this entire series. And if you haven't watched the previous movies, I would highly recommend going back and watching those. Otherwise, this movie is going to make no sense to you whatsoever. Alright, let's get into it, guys. We see Flatline plug in her flash drive, the one she wasn't sure made a full copy. The whole team waits behind her with bated breath as it's loaded. It pulls up. She successfully got the copy before the file was destroyed. We see her quickly make 3 copies. We're going to cut to the planning table. We see Flatline toss 3 flash drives onto the table. We hear Shade say, 3 targets, 3 teams. We have to take out every server or the portal's open and we lose. Flatline says, I hate to always be the nihilist, but how are we going to divide up? We don't know what sort of forces are going to be guarding these things. Whoever Nightshade attacks will certainly die. Shade says, no. She'll target me. Where I attack, she will too. I promise. Ratcatcher says, how can you be sure? Shade says, she has something of an obsession with me. I only just recently realized something about her, and I think I can kill her. Kima says, okay, so if she attacks you, that'll only leave whatever metahuman she has left to guard the other terminals. Katana says, it'll be Gentleman Ghost and Clue Master. They were the only 2 members of her squad left. Flatline says, and Clock King. Shade says, right. So we need 3 teams. I'll take Katana and Madame Xanadu. Flatline says, me and Matthew will take 1. Shade says, alright. And Ratcatcher says, I'll take Dorothy and Anawe. Shade says, right. We have a plan. Get these flash drives into those terminals and we buy the world a couple of months. If I can kill Nightshade, it all ends today. We hear a door open, and Harley enters the room. Flatline says, "Harley, you're awake." Harley says, "Well, I feel like a pile of dynamite blew up in my face." Ratcatcher says, "Actually, that's not far off." Harley says, "Really? Where's Dubois?" They all fall silent for a moment. It's Kima who speaks up. He didn't make it." Harley's face falls. She says, "How?" Ratcatcher says, "One of Nightshade's men killed him." Harley said, "And what are we gonna do about it? Because right now I feel like punching something." We're gonna cut to Clock King. We see Clock King moving down a hall towards Lilith Clay's room. He approaches the door and sighs. He starts to open it. We hear a voice from behind him. "You don't want to see her. Trust me." It's Cluemaster. Clock King says, "I think I do." Cluemaster says, "Well, remember I tried to warn you. She's not right in the head." Clock King turns away from him and enters the room. It's dark, and all we can hear are insane whispers from Lilith. She rocks back and forth on her bed. Clock King says, "Lilith?" She looks suddenly and jumps back behind the bed. After a moment, she peers up from her hiding space. "Talkman? Is that you?" Clock King says, "Yeah." Lilith rushes to him and grabs his hand. "The shadow comes. It will coat the sky and the sun. Blood will spill across the worlds. The blight will never cease its consumption. The brain. She needs the brain, the brain." Clock King pulls his hand away and shakes her shoulders. "What do you mean?" Lilith says, "We've already lost. It's over. I've seen it. The shadow, the brain." Clock King shakes his head and leaves her mumbling in the dark. He exits the room and finds Cluemaster waiting. Cluemaster smiles. "I told you. She's lost her mind." Clock King snorts and then moves back down towards the hall. Cluemaster says, "Be seeing you." Clock King spares a look back, but doesn't turn around. The camera focuses on Cluemaster. We see the bright purple in his eyes. It's an unnatural color. We're going to cut to Madame Xanadu's room. We see Xanadu sitting at her desk. Katana walks in and shuts the door behind her. Katana says, "The others have made a plan." Madame Xanadu says, "I know." Katana asks, "What did the cards tell you?" Xanadu looks away. Katana presses, "Tell me, Nimue, please." Madame Xanadu says, "They tell me that we have a chance, but they also say that you will die for it, that you must die for it." Katana sighs and says, "So be it. I am prepared to die." Madame Xanadu says, "I know." Katana says, "Tell me this. Will I be reunited with Masio on the other side, or is his soul truly bound to my blade?" Madame Xanadu says, "I do not know. Even I cannot see beyond the veil of the dead. I'm afraid Miss Nikia is alone in that capability." Katana says, "She does not believe there is anything after." Madame Xanadu says, "Then she is mistaken. There is undoubtedly something beyond this. What it is, we may only guess at." "I will miss you, old friend." Katana says, "And I you. But we will see each other again, and whatever lies beyond." We're going to cut to the hall. We see the squad preparing to leave. Harley says, "Remember, this isn't just a saving the world thing anymore. They made it a revenge thing, and it's going to be cold, but also sweet, like pudding or ice cream." She pulls her bat off the shelf on the wall and smacks it into her hand. She laughs manically. "I'm going to knock that bitch's brains right out of her skull." Shade says, "I'm not actually sure she even has a brain." Harley says, "Okay, I'll knock whatever is in there right onto the floor, and then I'm gonna piss on it. Who's with me?" Flatline says, "I don't know about the pissing part, but I like the killing part." We hear the song Wild Child by the Black Keys play as we see the squad gearing up. We see Flatline sharpen her knife on the end of her knife rope, next to Kimo, who attaches a new Geiger counter onto his shoulder, replacing the broken one. We see Katana sharpening her sword. As she does, we can hear her whispering to it. She speaks to the soul of her dead husband. We see Ratcatcher pull her gas mask over her face. She tucks one of Bloodsport's pistols onto her belt. We see Dorothy staring at a closet door in her room. No skeleton man emerges her. She stands up and leaves. Sergeant Stuffy appears on her shoulder. We see King Shark draw war paint across his face with his hand. Lastly, we see Madame Xanadu exit her room. She spares a look for Katana, then Shade. We see a frown grow across her face. We hear Shade say, "We all know the plan. Get to your terminals and turn them off." We see Katana throw down a ring portal. Kimo and Flatline enter the portal. Katana picks it up and then spins it again. A new portal opens. This time we see Ratcatcher, Dorothy, and King Shark enter. Lastly, they spin it up again, and we see Harley, Shade, Katana, and Madame Xanadu vanish, leaving the room empty. We're going to follow each team in sort of like a split screen thing, like a fun little stylistic bit, as they appear in front of a set of bunkers each. Crowds of people are waiting there. They have purple eyes. They immediately turn and start to attack the squad. The song Wild Child picks up as we see a montage of all three teams fighting against the mind-controlled minions to get into the rooms. I'll describe each battle, but kind of imagine they're being cut between quickly and stylistically, like at pivotal moments. You'd let an editor kind of go crazy with this. So I'll describe how each person fights, and y'all can imagine them like sort of swapping between each other in the middle of the fight. I'm also going to refer to the mind-controlled people as zombies here for simplicity's sake. We see Ratcatcher send swarms of rats onto two of the zombies. They eat them alive. Lastly, she shoots one in the head with Bloodsport's pistol. King Shark throws a giant zombie against the wall, causing it to explore and to gore. He grabs another one and eats it whole. Dorothy holds her hands out, and the cartoon octopus tentacles fly out. They wrap around a zombie and twist it into two pieces. With her other hand, she summons Jolly Hanger, who appears briefly in Suicide Squad 3. He impales the zombie with a twisted mass of hangers. Sergeant Stuffy dives off her shoulder and onto another zombie. He begins to wildly stab it in the skull with his knives until it dies. We see Madame Xanadu light two zombies on fire with flames she summons from her hands. We see Shade cut one in half with a sword made entirely from colorful swirling light. He summons a wall which knocks another one into Harley, who swings her bat at it, smashing its skull. She immediately kicks another one in the balls and then smashes it in the head with her bat as it falls over. We see Katana slice two with one stroke. As she puts her sword back into its sheath, their heads fall to the floor. Finally, we're going to cut to Kimo and Flatline. We see Kimo grab two of them and smash their heads together. They both explode. Flatline flips over his back as he bends over and uses her knife rope to slit a zombie's throat midair. She follows up with it by stabbing her knife into the head of another when she lands. A zombie rushes her. She smashes her hand all the way through its head, destroying its brain. We see Kimo open up the finger of his suit. He irradiates the last two zombies. They drop dead. We linger on Flatline and Kimo. Flatline says, "That was easy." Kimo says, "You know, compared to everything else." "Yeah, it was." He laughs. They move into the bunker, down a set of concrete stairs. When they finally arrive, we see the terminal. It's at the end of a hall. Between them stands a man in a nice suit and a top hat who leans against a cane. He smiles when they see him. All those of you who wanted some Gentleman Ghost action, here you go. You finally get it. Gentleman Ghost says, "Welcome! You're the ones they sent for the terminal. My fellow brothers with bombs." He gestures to his neck. Flatline and Kimo look at each other with puzzled faces. "Oh, sorry, how rude of me. I didn't introduce myself. I am James Croddock III, but my enemies call me Gentleman Ghost." He bows. "I'll be killing you today." Flatline starts to laugh. Gentleman Ghost says, "What's funny?" Flatline says, "Sort of the whole thing, but mostly it's the top hat." Gentleman Ghost tosses his cane up into his other hand. He pulls the bottom out and a sword is ripped free. He swishes it in the air and then strikes a fighter's form. "They told me about you two. You," he points to Flatline, "martial artist. Good, they say, but it won't matter. And you, radioactive man encased in metal. But you have a flaw. You still have to breathe. They showed me where to cut in order to take your oxygen. It won't be hard to kill you two." Kimo looks nervous. Gentleman Ghost says, "What, not funny now? Let's test your skill." He runs for them. Kimo throws a punch which Ghost dodges effortlessly. He spins towards Flatline, who swings her knife rope towards him. He deflects it with his sword, then swings the blade around to cut the rope midair. Flatline's knife goes clattering to the floor across the room. He swings his sword towards her in a series of quick strikes. Flatline dodges a few, but is quickly overwhelmed without her knife to block. Gentleman Ghost says, "Tisk tisk, sloppy form." He leaves a scratch across her face. Gentleman Ghost says, "You fight like you were trained by wolves. All anger, no technique. You'll simply have to do better." He scores another cut on her leg. We see Kimo try to punch him from behind. Gentleman Ghost dodges, sending Kimo crashing into Flatline. She goes sprawling to the floor. Chemo quickly helps her up. He says, sorry. We see Gentleman Ghost running for Chemo as his back is turned. Flatline says, Matthew, behind you! Chemo throws a hand over his neck, just in time to block the attack meant to cut the tubes running to his neck. Chemo swings around and hits Gentleman Ghost hard in retaliation. Gentleman Ghost is sent backwards by the blow. We see blood is now running from his broken nose. Gentleman Ghost says, I've played with my food enough. Suddenly, he vanishes. Chemo says, where'd he go? Flatline looks confused. He's right there. We see the blue outline of Gentleman Ghost. Flatline can see ghosts. She can see him clearly. Gentleman Ghost casually walks towards Chemo with all the confidence in the world. He's so sure no one can see him. He moves right by Flatline and primes his sword to cut Chemo's air cables. Flatline casually moves behind him and plunges her hand into his chest. She pulls out his heart. We see Gentleman Ghost look down in surprise. He says, oh. Flatline says, I see dead people, bitch. She kicks his body over and it falls face first to the floor. We hear a loud metallic slam and a hiss. They turn to see that the terminal is now sealed behind a large metal door. Flatline and Chemo rush over. They try to pry the door open, but it's sealed tight. Through the thick glass window, we can see Calculator trying to turn the machine on. Flatline says, we've got to stop him. Chemo begins to slam his fists into the glass, and Flatline joins him, hitting them with her knife. It doesn't work. The glass won't break. We're going to cut to Ratcatcher. She's walking down the stairs to enter her own terminal. But when they reach it, they find nothing but an empty concrete room. They look from side to side and explore around for a little bit, but there's nothing there. We see sudden horror come across Ratcatcher's face. Oh, fuck. She touches her earpiece. It's not here. The map was a trick. We hear only static. Her message doesn't get through. Dorothy says, if it's not here, then where is it? We're going to cut to the third bunker. We see Clock King and Cluemaster standing guard in a large hall leading to the terminal. We see text that says 2,456 miles away. We cut back to the squad. Ratcatcher says, what are we going to do? We have to find it. Dorothy says, how? King Shark says, we could ask. Ratcatcher says, ask who? He points to the entrance they came through. We hear a set of footsteps approaching from the shadows of the hall. The squad all ready their weapons. The footsteps grow louder and closer. Thump, 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 until we see Bloodsport step into the room. The Bloodsport's deal theme plays triumphantly as we get the reveal of our hero. Bloodsport says, I was hoping to find you. Dorothy runs up to him excited. I thought you died, she says. Ratcatcher feels uneasy. She says, wait, Dorothy. Bloodsport looks down at her. His face comes out of shadow for the first time, and we can see he has purple eyes. He pulls his katana from his back and swings it down towards Dorothy. Sergeant Stuffy dives in front of the blade and is sliced clean in two. He slides to the floor as red stuffing falls out from his body. He's dead. Dorothy falls backwards as she sees her friend's body. She says, Sergeant Stuffy! Bloodsport kicks Dorothy hard in the head as he approaches her. She's knocked unconscious. He says, no more imaginary friends. This'll be easy now. He moves his sword to impale her through the head. King Shark says, you hurt Dorothy, as he often tends to. He runs at Bloodsport. Bloodsport turns his attention to King Shark. He shoots King Shark with his rifle until he's knocked to the floor, like we see him do in The Suicide Squad. Ratcatcher holds up her rat summoner. Rats begin to pour through the front door. Bloodsport's prepared. He pulls his pistol out and shoots the rat collar with his pistol. The glass ball at the top explodes as the bullet reaches it. The rats all scatter away from its side effects. He begins to move towards her quickly, running at her. She struggles to pull her pistol free from her belt. She gets it out just in time and shoots Bloodsport twice in the chest. The bullets bounce off his armor. He knocks the pistol from her hand and pins her to the floor hard. She struggles but can't break free. He lowers his pistol until it's pointed at her head. We're going to cut the Shades team. We see text that says 6 minutes earlier. We see the squad enter the underground bunker for the third time. It's completely empty. No one waits. At the end of the room, we see the terminal. Shade looks around. She's here. Watch the shadows. We hear a voice echo from everywhere. He's right. Welcome to the end of your world. It was nice of you to join me. Nightshade appears from the shadows in the corner of the room. She moves towards the group and steps in front of the terminal, blocking their path. Shade leaps into action with a colorful sword in his hand. Nightshade swipes a hand and a fist of shadows smashes into him. He's thrown across the room and rolls to a stop on the floor. She says, He never learns that he's no match for me. Next, we see Katana charge at her with her sword out. We see concern light across Nightshade's eyes for only a moment. A tendril of shadow quickly shoots out and slices Katana across the guts. It throws her into the adjacent wall. Then we see Harley appear from beside Nightshade. She slams her baseball bat into Nightshade's head. Half of Nightshade's head collapses into darkness, and then quickly reforms from a shadow. She sends Harley flying into the wall with a punch to the gut. Nightshade laughs. Is that all? Madame Xanadu says, Enough, Morgana. We both know they're beneath you. Fight someone of equal skill. Nightshade says, Sister, why do you interfere? What do you have to do with these humans? Madame Xanadu says, Oh, so you remember me. I wasn't sure that the shadow would allow that. There was a time when you cared for humans as much as I. The shadow corrupts your mind, sister. They begin a battle of shadow and magic. It's intense and beautiful. I want lots of pinks and blues and bright colors from Xanadu's magic. This sort of clash visually with the black of Nightshade's, good versus evil. Real standard stuff, but I think it'll help with the, visuals. As the fight rages, we see Shade crawl to help Katana. He finds her on the floor. Her guts hang out of her body. She's shaking. She won't last long. She whispers, Please, with the sword. She moves her hand towards her sword and scoots it towards Shade. He asks, Are you sure? She nods. He draws the katana, and we hear the whispering from the blade. He positions it above her heart. She says, Masuo, I am coming. Shade drives the blade in deep. Katana turns and looks at him, and with her last breath, thanks him. We see the light leave her eyes, and the sword glow with white light for only a moment. Shade pulls the blade free and puts it back into its sheath. He looks over to where Harley is standing up. She looks over at him. The camera moves back towards the fight. We see Madame Xanadu battling Nightshade with a light show of colorful and bizarre spells. She sends a fiery blast right into Nightshade's chest. The wound is quickly healed by shadows. Nightshade snarls. Madame Xanadu says, Honestly, sister, your powers were always paltry compared to mine, but even with the power of the living shadow, you are still not my equal. Nightshade lets out a scream of rage. She thrusts her hands out, and we see even more shadows are drawn into her control. We're going to cut to Clock King. We focus on Cluemaster's eyes, and we see the purple leave them. Nightshade lost her focus. We linger on Cluemaster. He seems to shake his head as if recovering from being disoriented. Suddenly, he grabs Clock King's arm. Clock King says, What? Cluemaster says, You have to listen to me. We don't have much time. She lost her control of me. You have to stop her. I won't be able to keep her away long enough, but she hasn't taken control of you yet. Clock King says, Why? Cluemaster says, Can't you see? She's going to destroy it all. The whole world will be nothing but shadow. Clock King says, I don't care. You know my purpose. Cluemaster says, You fool. She's lying to you. She needs the brain, Talkman. She needs the brain to bring back the dead. She told us. We hear Clock King say, The brain? Cluemaster says, How long ago did your sister die? We see the realization dawn on him for the first time. Clock King says it out loud. She'll have rotted. Cluemaster says, She was never going to bring your sister back. She can't. Tears begin to fall from Clock King's eyes. Clock King says, Lilith tried to warn me. Cluemaster says, But we don't have time. You have to stop her device before it's too late. Cluemaster points down the hall towards the terminal. We cut to the room with Ratcatcher. The camera pans down and we see Bloodsport pin Ratcatcher to the ground. He twirls the pistol out of his hand and aims for her head. Ratcatcher begs, Please stop it. This isn't you. We see King Shark try to get up and charge Bloodsport once more. He shoots King Shark twice more with the pistol right where the rifle rounds hit him. Blood leaks from King Shark's chest and he falls over. He's severely hurt. Bloodsport turns the pistol back towards Ratcatcher. She begs, Please. Bloodsport says, Sorry, kid. This is sort of the mere Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad. Think pretty obviously. Suddenly, we see the purple drain from his eyes. He lowers his gun and steps off Ratcatcher's chest. Bloodsport says, She lost her control. He gives her a hand up and she hugs him. Bloodsport says, You did good, kid. Ratcatcher says, The terminal. It's not here. We've lost. Bloodsport says, This was a trap. I was supposed to kill you all. Especially her. He points to Dorothy before bending over to check on her. She's still unconscious. Bloodsport says, "She'll be okay." Ratcatcher says, "How are you alive? How is this possible?" Bloodsport says, "I don't know. I died. I was somewhere else, and then I felt her pull at me. It was like the darkness itself was dragging me away. When I woke up, she had control of me. It was like a never-ending nightmare." Ratcatcher says, "But you're alright now. That's what matters." We cut to Madame Xanadu. We see the battle between Xanadu and Nightshade continue. It's a big CGI blowout, cool contrasting visuals as I said before. This is the main chunk of the fight. Nightshade, with all of her focus squarely on the battle, begins to defeat Xanadu. Finally, she sends a lance of shadow straight into Xanadu's shoulder. Xanadu is sent to her knees, defeated. Nightshade snarls, "Honestly, sister, I expected better from you. I have won at last." We see a few shadows split away from her. We cut back to Ratcatcher. Suddenly, purple returns to Bloodsport's eyes. He starts to fight it. "She's trying to take my mind again." Ratcatcher says, "Fight it." Bloodsport says, "I can't. You have to kill me. Hurry." Ratcatcher pulls out his pistol again and points it at him, but she can't bring herself to pull the trigger. Not against her friend. We see the purple consume his eyes. He pulls his sword from his back and swings it down at her. She pulls the trigger on her gun in reaction, and a bullet enters Bloodsport's head. His brains are blown out and slam into the concrete. His body falls back to the floor. Ratcatcher sits on the ground and begins to sob. She curls up into a ball. We're going to cut back to Clock King. We see Cluemaster suddenly go rigid. Cluemaster says, "She's taking control. Quickly, kill me, destroy the brain." Clock King pulls his pistol, but he's also too slow. Cluemaster's eyes go purple and he knocks the gun aside. Clock King fires 2 shots, but they miss his head because they were knocked away. They engage in hand-to-hand fighting for a minute. Again, I'm going to simplify this and not describe the intense battle. If I was writing a real script that was actually going to be made into a movie, I would go into more detail, but we'll breeze over this. As the fight goes on, we hear Clock King's ticking theme grow louder. Clock King cuts Cluemaster's main hand with his knife. Cluemaster tosses his own knife into his offhand, then sinks it deep into Clock King's chest. Clock King grunts. Cluemaster chuckles. He whispers, "Your time is up, Talkman." Clock King says nothing. Instead, he grabs the knife hand with his own and holds it tight, leaving the knife in his own body. Cluemaster tries to pull his hand free, but Clock King won't let go. His grip is iron. We see him slowly lifting the hand with the pistol up. Cluemaster tries to stop it with his free hand, but he's not strong enough since it's been cut by Clock King's knife. Clock King raises the gun to Cluemaster's head and fires, blowing his brains out. Cluemaster falls to the floor, leaving the knife deep in Clock King's chest. Clock King turns and stumbles towards the terminal. We hear the song "My Way" by Frank Sinatra begin to play, mixed with his classic ticking. We see him fish the flash drive he took from Flatline out of his pocket. He still has it. He stumbles again as he heads for the terminal. We see him at last reach the terminal after a minute of bloody stumbling. With his bloody hands, he plugs it in. We see it loaded into the computer system. The files are extracted. As the download continues, Clock King fades. He slumps to the ground, leaning against the server. The camera pans up, and we see the words "execute file" and a yes or no option appear on screen. Clock King hasn't finished this yet. The song "My Way" fades away. Clock King is too weak to press the button. He's dying. We're gonna cut to Flatline and Chemo, still banging against the glass, trying to break it. Chemo says, "This is useless." Flatline tries a different approach. "Hey, Calculator, can you hear me in there?" Calculator turns a knob and then faces the window. He says, "Of course I can." Flatline says, "Good. Listen, that device, if it turns on, it's going to end the world, and I do mean literally." Calculator says, "I am aware." Flatline says, "So turn it off. We can do it for you. We have a way." Calculator says, "You are stolen virus. Again, I am aware. I'm afraid I don't believe it's in my interest to let you." Flatline says, "Well, given that you live on Earth, I'd say it's in your interest." Calculator says, "You do not understand. For years I tried to convince them the value of my technology. I told them I could deliver them endless possibility. Not one of them listened to me. It was too dangerous, they told me. Except for Nightshade. She let me build my machines. I always wanted my machines to change the world, and now they will. Calculator, the man who ended the world. It has a nice ring to it. Kimo says, "That's fucking crazy, man. Think about what you're doing." Calculator says, "I have. Give up. Enjoy your last few moments. This glass is impenetrable. I designed it myself. So long, Suicide Squad. In mere moments, my machine will activate, and the world will forever remember my name." Flatline just suddenly says, "Chernobyl." Kimo says, "What?" Flatline says, "Come on, the HBO show. The radiation from the meltdown. It fried the computers." Kimo nods his head. "Yeah, I get it." We see the fingers of his suit pop open. He points them towards the glass. Nothing happens. Kimo says, "It's not enough. The glass must be too thick." "It was a good thought." Flatline nods her head. "It still is. We could open the suit. Waller told us it could be opened manually." Kimo shakes his head. "That wouldn't work. You'd have to do it, and you'd receive a lethal dose of radiation in minutes." Flatline looks at him and says, "I know. I'm willing to do it." Kimo says, "No, not that. That's not an option." Flatline says, "Matthew, please. It's the only way I can see." Kimo says, "No. We'll find another way." He begins to slam his metal fist into the glass wall again and again. Hard. It doesn't break. Inside, we can see Calculator priming the terminals. It begins to light up. Kimo bangs his fists again and again to no avail. Flatline says, "We don't have time. If those portals turn on, we lose everything." Kimo says, "If you open my suit, I lose everything. I can't do it again. I can't be alone." Flatline says, "I've seen death since the day I was born. Ironically, it's what made me appreciate the beauty of life. It's incredible if only we choose to really look. The goodness it can bring. And I won't have it snuffed out by some bitch. Not on account of my life. Please, Matthew, give me this." Kimo tries to beg. He says, "But..." She cups his head and moves it up to look at her. "Hey, I've seen the other side. It's not so bad," she says. Kimo lets his head drop. He says, "Don't make me say it." Flatline says, "You don't have to." She moves along the back of his suit and begins to open it. We see her turning the sort of metal wheel that's there. A hiss follows. We see tears falling from Kimo's eyes. The Geiger counter on his shoulder begins to tick violently. We see its dial move all the way to the red end of the meter. Kimo steps out of the suit for the first time in this entire series, guys. His skin glows faintly green. Flatline knows she's already dead. She says, "Hey." She holds out her hands, and Kimo takes them. As her hands grip his for the first time, we see Flatline's pale skin turn bright red with radioactive sunburn. We see her face is turning completely red with burns. I want it to be kind of like spreading across her body as like a grotesque visual, sort of intermixed with the sort of sweet visuals too. Again, contrast. She leans in and hugs Kimo. We see the same shot of her hands wrapping around his shoulders we've seen a couple of times. For the first time, she isn't touching the metal, but the man. Flatline says, "This isn't your fault. You know that." He nods. "I know." She says, "It's funny. I was so afraid of this, but now that it's here and I'm with you, it doesn't scare me anymore. I don't know what's after the..." She pulls away and stumbles back. Blood is running from her eyes and nose. She falls to one knee and vomits on the floor. We see Calculator is also dying inside his bunker. The radiation is hitting him too. The machinery is starting to spark and fall out. Kimo's putting out such extreme levels of radiation that they're dying within minutes. Error messages begin to pop up on the screen of the terminal. Kimo moves next to Flatline again. She whispers weakly, "I love you. I'm gonna see..." She coughs up more blood. It sprays across Kimo's chest. Flatline says, Matthew." She falls back and begins to cough up even more blood. It runs from her ears, her nose, her mouth, her eyes. Her skin is literally falling off her body. She begins to seize. We see her look up to the ceiling, and a bright glowing light washes across her face. She smiles, and then dies. We see Kimo sobbing over her body as the camera pulls back. We see the lights of the terminal wink out. They shut down their terminal, but at a great cost. I really wanted to do this, so obviously I planned this from number 4. A little bit even after number 3 I planned this death. I did lots of setups. There's lots of Chekhov guns for this actually. If you go back and watch 4, you'll get some fun moments with it being teased then. But Kimo always kills some version of a squad members in the comic books. In the comic books, it's always presented as like Kimo's the big monster who irradiates everybody. So I thought it would be kind of fun to take him into this movie, and instead of making the death like a big over-the-top blowout, make it tragic and sad while also doing the gore of a radiation burn. This is the first time we've seen it like in its full visual glory, and it's pretty horrible. Not a great way to go. but an interesting death, and I killed my favorite character, Flatline. That character is basically one I invented, so I'm very fond of her. Oh well, guys, this is officially the last time Flatline will ever be a character in any comic book, so sayonara. We're gonna cut to Clock King. We see Clock King leaning against his terminal, bleeding out. We hear a whisper from beside him. The whispered voice says, "William?" Clock King shifts his head to look. It's his sister, crouched next to him, the same way we saw her in 4. She smiles. "I missed you." Clock King says, "I'm so sorry. I let you die. It was my fault." His sister shakes her head. "No, William, no, it wasn't your fault. You did everything for me. You were my hero." Clock King says, "No, I let them take you. I failed you." His sister says, "You fought for me. Sometimes life's just cruel." Clock King starts to cry. His sister wipes away the tears. She says, "You were my hero. But now the whole world needs you. You have to press that button. Please, William, for me." Clock King looks up at the computer. He pushes himself up on his legs and arms with all of his effort. We hear the song My Way kick back into the chorus. We hear the ticking right alongside it as it blends with Clock King's score. He hoists himself up until he can see the screen. He coughs up blood. We see his vision blurring, but he manages to press the button. We see the words "Sequence Initialized" on the screen. The server is shut down. Clock King slides back to the floor. His head lolls to the side where he can see his sister. She smiles at him. "You did it." Clock King's eyes are shut. Blood pours from his wounds. We hear the breath go out of him and he dies. The camera pulls back, and we see that his sister was never there. We're going to cut back to Nightshade. She walks towards Madame Xanadu's kneeling body. She smiles, about to go in for the kill, when Shade appears. He throws up a gigantic wall of colorful energy that blocks all of Nightshade's shadows. As hard as Nightshade presses against them, she cannot defeat them. Shade launches a series of attacks from them, cutting into Nightshade. She heals back her wounds from Shadow. She looks confused. "How have you become more powerful since we fought? Have you let this madness consume you so much?" Shade says nothing. Hiyome continues to fight. He pushes Nightshade back. She's losing yet again. She's on the back foot. We hear an electronic sound loudly come to life. You hear that? The last terminal in their room finally whines to life. We zoom into the room where it's set. Text appears on screen that says Portal Network Online. Calculator successfully activated all of the machines remotely, including this one. We see the portal in the room ripple open with a black portal. Madame Xanadu sits up and covers the portal with magical energy. We're going to cut to Comforton. We see the portal in the center of the mall whine to life, and the black portal open at its center. Shadows begin to ooze out of it like fog. They start to consume the area, destroying everything around them. We're going to cut to a few more portals opening. Maybe we get some cameos from a few heroes trying to stop it, but it's not possible. We'll see the Shadow destroy some buildings, maybe kill some people, cause some carnage to build the stakes. Nightshade laughs. "You may have shut down 2 of my terminals. I feel it. It's a cute effort, but it doesn't matter. You were all too weak to stop me. Even now, the Shadow Dimension consumes your world. It is over. You cannot win. Surrender, Shade. End this farce and keep your life, and those of your friends." Shade says nothing. He forms a mallet from the Madness vest. It's colorful. He tries to smash it against her. She grabs it with shadows and crushes it. Nightshade grows even more mad. Shadows launch out into a new relentless assault on Shade. Shade blocks her attacks with his colorful shields and even counterattacks with some magic. Even still, he's no match for Nightshade with a direct connection to the Shadow Dimension. We see Madame Xanadu trying to hold the portal back, but she's not strong enough. Her magic gives way and the shadows pour out. They begin to climb up Nightshade, making her cloaked in black shadow. The rooms in the light flicker. Nightshade laughs sinisterly. She launches her full power at Shade. He forms another colorful shield. It holds back the shadows for only moments before it cracks into the force. Nightshade says, "Goodbye, Shade." The shadows pierce through his shield and impale him. Nightshade uses the shadows to hoist him up by his wound. He dangles, held only by shadows. Shade begins to laugh as the shadowy blade slips free from his chest and he falls to the floor. Only it isn't Shade's laugh. Blood runs from the wound and he falls to his knees. Nightshade looks confused. The laugh begins to grow stronger from Shade. We can hear it clearly. It's Harley Quinn. The illusion of Shade slips away and we see Harley Quinn is wearing the Madness vest. She says, "You got tricked, asswipe." The only person more insane than Shade is Harley Quinn, so it makes complete sense to me that if you put the Madness Vest on her, it would get powers. Another thing I'd set up a long time ago when I described how the Madness Vest works. A fun little twist and subversion on what y'all were expecting. Nightshade spins around just in time to see the real Shade plugging in the flash drive. He presses the enter key and the virus begins to shut down the terminal. Nightshade says, "No!" We see the portal wink out. All of the shadows are cut off. Nightshade launches all of her shadows at Shade, but they smash against one of Madame Xanadu's magical barriers. Harley pulls off the Madness Vest and throws it to Shade, who catches it. He slides it on quickly, and its shapes begin to move. Nightshade says, "How?" Shade says, "You told me that when you look at me in the vest, you see only the man. I can't believe I didn't think of it sooner. The vest shows my enemies their own worst fear. You wanted me to believe you weren't afraid of anything. But you were afraid of me. Afraid of the feelings you still have for me. I knew if I gave Harley the vest, you wouldn't know the difference." He runs at her with hate in his eyes. Nightshade attacks again, surrounding him with black shadows. The colorful shields from his vest hold them back barely. Nightshade says, "This is pointless. You cannot harm me. You are nothing but a cockroach beneath my power. I am beyond you." Shade pulls Katana's sword free from its sheath at his belt. Shade says, "I wouldn't be so sure. This sword traps the souls of its victims. You always called it the living shadow. I wonder if it has a soul." He plunges it straight into the shadow surrounding her. We see the sword begin to absorb all of the shadow into itself like a vortex. Shadows swirl around Shade like a tornado of blackness, all pulled into the sword. Soon the shadow vanishes. We can see the dark wisps of shadow dropping from the katana. We see Nightshade, completely naked and human. Shade approaches her, sword in hand. We can still see black energy seeping from it. Nightshade says, "Please, Shade, it's me. It's Nightshade. The shadow is gone. You freed me." We can see her forming a small dagger of shadow behind her back. Shade approaches her. Nightshade says, "We can be together again. I missed you." She reaches out a hand to cup his cheek. Shade says, "I won't be fooled by you again." He stabs her through the chest with the katana. Nightshade screams, and it sounds inhuman. A last line of dark shadows slips through her body and into the sword. Nightshade's eyes glaze over, and her body falls to the floor dead. Shade says, "It's done." He quickly moves to Harley. She's barely breathing. Shade says, "Xanadu, help her." Xanadu shakes her head. "She's beyond my help now." Harley says, "Good. Don't bring me back. It's finally my turn to be the hero. I've been waiting for this." She smiles and dies. We're going to cut to Chemo as he carries Flatline's body out of her bunker. We hear the song "How Are You True" by Cage the Elephant play. Tears flow in his eyes. He sets her down in the sunlight, then sits next to her. We're going to cut to a graveyard. We see the entire surviving team there. All wear black except for King Shark, who wears only pants. We linger on them for a moment as the song continues to play. We let the melancholy sink in. After a moment, Dorothy asks, "What now?" Madame Xanadu says, "Even if its host is dead, the shadow still lies in wait. The boundary between universes is fraying. Things like Nightshade were able to slip through. It will not hold long. Soon things will begin to come into this world." Shade says, "Things like Nightshade?" Madame Xanadu says, "Yes, perhaps even something worse. This world must be ready. These events have shown me. I've hidden myself for too long. This world needs protection from things that lurk in the dark. The things men may not yet even believe to be real." Dorothy says, "So like a Justice League for monsters?" Shade asks, "What's a Justice League?" Dorothy says, "A team of heroes that fight bad guys." Shade says, "Heroes. I like it. A Justice League for the dark." Madame Xanadu says, "So, what do you say to this?" We see Ratcatcher think for a moment. She says, "It's a tempting offer, but I think me and King Shark here have our own path to follow. I want to form a new Suicide Squad, like I promised Dubois I would. One that would stand for something better." Madame Xanadu shakes her head. "I understand." She turns to Dorothy. "And what of you, Dorothy Spinner?" We see Dorothy torn between the two offers, between the Suicide Squad and the Justice League Dark. She looks from Ratcatcher to Madame Xanadu. Dorothy said, "Bloodsport told me I could do great things for people. I want to join you, Ratcatcher. I really do, but I feel like I have to do this." She turns to look towards Madame Xanadu. Ratcatcher says, "It's okay. Go. Follow your heart. I'll always be there if you need me. King Shark touches his heart and says, we always friends. Sort of a nice little sweet touching moment as the team splits up. Dorothy says, then I'll join your Justice League Dark. Madame Xanadu says, wonderful. Dorothy asks, what about you, Chemo? We see Chemo for the first time. He sits quietly looking over Flatline's grave. He's somber. He says, I made a promise. It's foolish and probably impossible, but I'm going to try to be normal for a while. If I can. He stands up and looks towards the sunset. I just don't know how I'm going to do it. Ratcatcher says, if you ever need us, we'll be here. Chemo says, thank you. He turns and leaves them all behind. We pan down to see a set of flowers on Flatline's grave. They're the same as the one he picked and showed her in Suicide Squad 4. We also see on Flatline's gravestone it says, Nakia, hero friend badass. Ratcatcher says, I guess we should be going too. I have work to do. Dorothy runs up and hugs Ratcatcher tightly. Ratcatcher rubs her hair and smiles at her. She says, I'll see you soon. She and King Shark turn to leave. Only the newly formed Justice League Dark is left. Shade asks, so how do we start? Madame Xanadu says, that seems simple enough. We find others who are willing to brave the dark. We smash the credits as the song How Did We Get So Dark by Royal Blood plays. And so obviously my next writing project will be Justice League Dark. I think a couple of you actually figured this out. Saw some indie windows and references to this. I'd mentioned doing it months ago, but yeah, I'd been planning this the whole time. I've been sneakily introducing characters from the Justice League Dark mythos. Both Shade and Madame Xanadu are founding members of the original team. Dorothy Spinner is sort of my own addition. I think she fits with the sort of kind of characters that make it in there. She has amazingly cool powers, and she's a character I want to develop further. So we'll see a lot of her. However, we do have some after credit scenes. They are a cliche of superhero movies, so I've got to include them at this point. After the credits and the song end, we see a group of construction workers clearing away rubble from the warehouse fight in the first act. A worker flips over a large piece of concrete with a crane. He immediately puts a hand to his nose. Worker says, ugh, got another stiff over here. The camera moves down and we see it's the hat's body. It's rotting. The worker notices the hat. He picks it up and shows it to the others. Looks like this one's from the 1800s. They all laugh. He tosses the hat away. We see it land on the dusty floor, and then it vanishes. We're going to cut to a wooden rack. We see that hat appear next to 3 more hats identical to it on a wooden rack. We can hear murmuring in the background and talking. Suddenly, a woman's hand picks up the hat. The camera moves across the scene following the hat. In the background, we see a poster that says, The Amazing Zatanna. At last, we zoom out enough to get the reveal of Zatanna. She holds her classic black and white wand and is in her outfit. She's on stage at a show. She says, for my next trick, I will demonstrate a transformation by turning this rabbit, she turns her wand towards a rabbit in a cage, into doves. She waves her hand and points it at the rabbit. There's a puff of smoke and the rabbit transforms into birds. They fly away as she bows. The audience erupts into cheers. We move into the audience until we see Shade and Madame Xanadu. Xanadu says, she's perfect. Shade says, what, that? It was a stage trick. She's clearly a children's magician. Xanadu smiles and says, I forget, Shade. You were not really a mage. That was true magic. No trick to it. And strong magic at that. She transformed a living organism into a different one. Shade says, you're saying she's the real deal? Madame Xanadu says, yes. I think we should have a chat with her. I'm going to end that scene. We got one more after credit scene. We open up on a dingy bar. A nervous man is sitting at a table. The man says, I'm telling you, it's legit. He's talking to someone hidden in shadow. The mysterious voice says, are you sure? You know what I'll do to you if you're wrong. Man says, it's the map, John. It'll lead you to the Dawn Spear. Now pay up. I risked my neck for this. A large purse of coins slides across the table. We see the man open up the bag. He pulls out a gold coin and bites it. He seems happy. He reaches over and pulls a small piece of tanned leather. He unrolls it on the table. We can see an old map painted on it. The mysterious voice says, I'll be damned. You really got it. It was a pleasure doing business. The man says, likewise. You didn't get this from me, though, if things go wrong. The man gets up and leaves. We linger in the darkness. We see a lighter ignite, and for the first time in the light of the fire, we see John Constantine. He lights up a cigarette and smokes. He leans forward and smiles. He takes the map. The end. This is obviously more of a teaser for Justice League Dark stuff. Our MacGuffin for that movie will be something called the Dawn Spear, which those of you who know your comic book shit will know that this is not a comic book thing, and that was a deliberate choice. This is my own invention, but it ties into comic book stuff. My take on Justice League Dark is going to be very different than some of the comic books. I'm pitching more of a magical adventure action series, something like Indiana Jones but with magic, but we'll mostly focus on fleshing out John Constantine. It's going to be a character study on him, and I can actually go a bit further than that, and I can say my first episode will be out next week. That might be a surprise for y'all, but I actually planned the script ahead of time. I plan to set it up in this movie, so it's actually pretty outlined, and I can for sure do my introducing the characters. There are some members of the team we have not met yet, so y'all who are fans of my DC stuff, I encourage you to stick around even though I'm done with Suicide Squad, and maybe try Justice League Dark out. See if that's something that you also enjoy. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let's go into the outro.
Well, that was pretty good. I did kill a lot of characters, but we also have some happiness to sort of counteract our melancholy ending. A little bit of mixed emotions there. Big CGI blowout. It would probably look terrible. I'm talking Flash CGI if it was real. It would look horrible. In fact, I would refuse to use any practical effects. Everything I did would be CGI, but like really bad Flash tier CGI. Either the TV show or the movie. Either one works, honestly. Flash is just cursed. So yes, I will be doing Justice League Dark. Yes, it will be coming out next week. That was not an exaggeration. And y'all can probably look forward to that. Alright, and remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Real fast, I do have a Discord now. I'm going to be posting teasers for the Justice League Dark video there. If you want to go check those out, you can join there. I also chat there, so if you want to sort of talk with me or other people in the community, I think a lot of people chit-chat down there, you can join, and you will be very welcome. You can also ask questions for us to do on the Massacast. There, and so that's really cool. So if you want to know about new videos or see secret content that might be dropped there soon, join our Discord. Alright guys, thank you for watching. If y'all are looking for something else to watch right now, you cannot wait for Justice League Dark, you're in luck, because right here I just released the full series of Writing the Thunderbolts, and if you want to get ahead on my take on magic, you can check out Writing a Harry Potter Murder Mystery right here. We just put out our second act there where we revealed the killer, so if you want to go try to guess who it is before you get to the end, you can go do that. It's been an honor to write Suicide Squad, and I will never do it again. Adios.